How are we all? Hey, curses. I'm feeling so sick today. This is gonna be rough. This is gonna be really rough. I'm hoping it's not COVID again. That would suck. But that'd be very bad luck. But we will persevere. Did you forget to shave or something? No, I only shave once a week. Should I shave? I got time, but you'll be sitting here listening to music the entire time. Why are you doing this? Because P.F. Young asked me to, and I'm stupid. That's why. I don't know why I'm doing anything that I do. I'll be fine. I've told Wick in advance that I may not be able to stay for all of the audience questions. It just depends on, like, how much I'm running on fumes by the end of this. Is P.F. Young a Petersonian? Oh boy, is he. Oh boy, is he. I wonder if he's live right now, actually. Let's see. Nope, not for 40 minutes. He's cutting it right down to the hour. Or you know what? Just for the hell of it. Just because I'm curious to see what happens. I'm gonna pop the theory stream up. The theory bar up. What should I do if the theory bar hits 100? Let's see. We should involve him and Wick in it. Hang on, let's see. I'll put an audience question. Exactly, fuck the audience, I agree. Call them the Arslers, obviously? No. That's not my style. That's not what we do here. Insult Wick? I've already done that. I do that too often, come on. Think of something... Like, what if I forced them? What if I just, over their protest, just forced them to do... I hope you read more of the book because Petersonians know their master's material inside and out. It won't help them, and I'll tell you why. But thank you for the $5. I'll tell you why it won't help him. And that's that Peterson's project is broken in its inception. It is broken and incoherent at the moment he lays out his terms. On page 1, we have a fundamental contradiction. Peterson is actually incoherent. I have no idea how the hell he was published. He's not just incoherent, he has no conversance with any of the people in the fields he's touching on. It drives me absolutely insane. You could read that awful Jordan Peterson soundbite? Which one? There's a lot of them. It's honestly one of the most painful books I've ever had to read. And I've read large chunks of it in the past. It's 400 pages long. I haven't gone through the whole thing from top to bottom. But read the first section. Just read the first section. Okay? Maps of experience, object and meaning. It's incoherent. I don't know if Wick will actually give me time to read my opening statement just because of how incoherent it is, but it's bad. Maybe, but Jordan B. Peterson is clout. Yeah, but that's an indictment on us culturally. He's just gonna accuse you of misunderstanding maps of meaning constantly Sunday. That's the go-to strategy by them. Well, he's welcome to it. No loss to me. If he wants to be obtuse, that's fine. Have you read Atlas Shrugged? I have. It's painful. It's so dull. The better, albeit much rapier, book by Ayn Rand of those two big, chunky ones is The Fountainhead. Peterson does cause headaches. This is true. The blue books on the shelf behind you are the Cambridge texts. Are they Cambridge texts? Yes, they are. Some of them are. So this is Plato's Laws. Excuse me, Duck Nana. These are Rousseau's Discourses and other earlier writings. This is The Social Contract and other later political writings. This is Kant's political writings. Do I have any other Cambridge ones here? I've got a shit ton of Cambridge up here. I have Phenomenology of Spirit, Encyclopedia of the Science of Logic, sorry, the lesser logic as it's called, Science of Logic by Hegel, Kant's Metaphysics of Morals. Cambridge's philosophy books come in green. Their political philosophy books come in blue. I also have, I got other things elsewhere. I have to my left here a copy of Montesquieu's Spirit of the Laws. That might actually be all I have for the blue books in political science. Yeah, I think that might actually be it. And then I have the Hackett edition of Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. I actually prefer the Pluhar translation by, not Hackett, I have the Cambridge translation of Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. I prefer the Pluhar translation in Hackett. Where's the squid? It's right here. I don't want the squid to be a part of this. She's an academic. She has a reputation to maintain. Hegel is non-political. He's very political. Actually, I had 2 books come in today. One of them actually was the Cambridge Phenomenology of Spirit. The other one, I'm really excited to get into, is the full Cambridge publication of Kant's Critique of Hegel's Philosophy of Right. And I'm pleased to announce the quality is not shit. It is a paperback, but it's a well-produced, stable paperback that will not break. I wonder if Wick's live. Maybe we can just chat with him while we're waiting. I do not want to look at any more Peterson while I'm waiting for this. Not at all. I am so sick of Peterson. That reminds me, Prez, what happened with the Montesquieu Spirit of the Law series you're once doing with Clifford Bates? I can explain later in DMs. One of my mods can probably tell you. Nothing particularly serious, just political stuff. Bates is an older fellow. I don't want to cause him problems. Have you ever heard of Blitz survival games? No. He 100% wants to be obtuse. I mean, I suppose it would be interesting to look at a P.F. Young debate before this. I am kind of curious. We have half an hour. Oh, we debated Vosh. I forgot about that. Let's take a look at this. I'd like to see him debate Cass Harris, but it'll never happen. She's not feeling well these days. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, got so many tabs open. Dear God. Okay. This is what he learned from his debate with Vosh. Well, that's interesting. Well, let's read it. 6 minutes long. Okay.
All right, I think I did well there in terms of my position. I actually did like talking to Paul. A good amount. That guy was so dumb. Well, he said it up front, and I think it's true. I think he has a very strong emotional attachment to a couple of the positions here. I mean, we all do, right? But, you know, no, I enjoyed the conversation a lot. That was fun. Thanks to that closing, Vosh. I agree. He was very human in his approach to stuff. Yeah, so, okay, I've said this before, but, like, the final stage of fascist engagement in terms of, like, disagreeing with other people is knowing dishonesty. And a lot of people who are fascist, who debate online, are in that position. But with Paul, my man's actually a guy, like a person, you know?
One of my goals on this channel is, I have several,
So
but
somber.
it's to address the biggest problem that I think I am capable of addressing, even just a
This begs for a bookshelf analysis, but I can't see anything past his head.
little bit. And that problem is that
There is a Penguin edition here. That purple one, it's difficult to gauge the thickness at this distance, so that may actually be... No, it's got a white back. That's not what it is. I don't think that's what it is, anyways. Unless it's a slim white book next to it. Which it might be. It might be, actually. But I digress.
everyone seems to hate each other. And when I saw this clip from Vosh, I thought, this doesn't make any sense. Why would someone who is supposedly a narcissistic, sociopathic, evil person, according to some, why would he push back against his own audience to defend someone who just spent the last 3 hours publicly insulting him in a lot of ways and pushing back against everything he said, and also putting forward ideas that him and his audience would regard as fascistic? He's either stupid, which obviously isn't the case, or he is just being kind to a fellow white supremacist, which is what FT Signifier would say. But until FT Signifier actually has a conversation with me and just doesn't leave comments on my videos,
What is this? Oh, he did an FT Signifier video. Maybe that would be worth looking at. Hang on, let's see here. Where is that? That's from way back, huh? Not seeing FD anywhere. No, Peterson does not spew word salad. Okay, this should be good.
I get too into my head, and it's like, oh, it's got to be perfect. No, it doesn't have to be perfect because life isn't perfect, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to do this stand-up, get your body moving type video in which we address what I think is the most ridiculous criticism that people make of Jordan Peterson. And there are plenty of good ones, but the most ridiculous one is that Jordan B. Peterson spews word salad. In his 12,000 word mini novel about Jordan Peterson, which is all this, Nathan J. Robinson, who is just the absolute epitome of raw animal magnetism, intellect, sophistication.
Free markets are the greatest poverty reduction system in the history of the world. Poor people have iPhones now.
Just the absolute top G, more so than Cobra Tate himself. Nathan Robinson says, and I quote, "Needless to say," I'll do it in a British accent. I can't do it in a British accent. "Needless to say, when someone is this..."
Okay, I'm not listening to you. Needless to say, when someone is this convinced of their own brilliance, they can be unaware of just how far afield they have drifted from the world of sense and reason. The diagrams and figures and maps of meaning are astonishing. They are masterpieces of unprovable gibberish. This is true. You want to look at some? Let's take a look. Actually, he's going to show us some. We'll just pause on the screen here.
This convinced of their own brilliance, they can be unaware of just how far afield they have drifted from the world of sense and reason. True. The diagrams and figures in maps of meaning are astonishing. They are masterpieces of unprovable gibberish. This is not what he sounds like at all, alright? But everyone from the island of the United Kingdom sounds the same to me, and that's all fine. Let me tell you why this isn't the case. These are masterpieces of unprovable gibberish. This is silly, because these...
Look at this graph.
Okay.
These diagrams, as I'm about to explain here in a second, I've got these nice lectures pulled up just to contextualize stuff, are not gibberish. They're, in fact, very useful. And they're some of the most fundamental diagrams in Jordan Peterson's maps of meaning. And listen, I'm gonna be honest, nobody loves diagrams more than I do, okay? So let's get into it. All right, it is now 2 hours later, having screwed up in so many ways. But anyway, let's start with this first part of the diagram. I'm going to let Jordan Peterson explain it initially, and then we'll walk through it.
Okay. You know what's kind of great about Jordan Peterson? I can do a Nomos video of him by myself because he actually draws it out for us. The problem is there's going to be incoherences here. So let's see. What should be versus what is the unbearable present? And then we have arrows diagonally. I don't know why they are diagonal. I don't know what this diagonality gets you. But we have a planned sequence of behavior from what is. Predicted outcome, unpredicted outcome, threat, promising, like this could just be horizontal, but I guess this is cooler. Predicted outcome, promise, hope, pleasure. You have a predicted outcome. Okay.
So
So
I've made the case for you that you exist within this
God, I watched this years ago.
thing. I've never figured out exactly what to call it, because you can call it a game, or you can call it a frame of reference, which is a pretty good one, or you can call it a story, or you can call it a unit of
Just call it a diagram, man.
perception, but that's not
It's a
exactly right, 'cause it's more than
diagram.
perception. It's really what it is a micro personality. It's your personality as it manifests itself at the highest possible resolution. That's what this is.
It's your personality as it manifests itself at the highest possible resolution. Okay. Any time that you are doing anything, you are operating in one of these frames, okay? If you are a human being doing anything, this defines what you are doing. There's a couple parts to it. There's the outside parts and the middle parts.
I'm at the unbearable present myself.
When you do something, what do? You go from point A to point B. That's what is the unbearable present. Should have a laser pointer here. That's this. This is point A, and this is point B.
That's completely the opposite of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you actually need to have a bearable present in order to even conceive of an ideal future as something that is worth striving towards. This is why people in misery and poverty tend to fall into things like drug addiction, stuff that has, like, you know, a short-term outlook.
You cannot.
This is actually, like, contrary to what we know about how humans think and plan. This is really dumb.
Do anything without going from point A to point B. Now, it might not be a physical move, but it could be a state shift. So, I can go from here to the grocery store, or I can do my homework, and that means going from a state of not having my homework done to having it done. So, doing something involves going from point A to point B. There's no if, and, or buts about it. And when you do something, one of two things happens. Either you get a predicted outcome, or an unpredicted outcome, or a semi-unpredicted outcome, or whatever. So, when you are doing
Or maybe the planned sequence of behavior has an outcome that is sort of staggered. And so, for example, you treat, to use Sargon of Akkad's horrible gloss on Aristotle, you treat excellence as a habit, and you think to yourself, I'm going to rigorously do X, Y, and Z every single day, and then things will gradually get better. That's not the kind of thing that manifests in a single event for you to judge this was a bad sequence of behavior versus something else. This is, in fact, basically how the norms under every single community work. It's the same thing that we do. It's the underlying premise of abide by the rules because nebulously things work better if you don't. That kind of thing. God, I feel like I'm talking like him now.
Something and the predicted outcome occurs, what happens? You get the feeling of, this is what the diagram indicates, it's kind of weird, promise, hope, and pleasure. Pleasure is the most important one. Dopamine, you do something.
Yeah, but hope's perspective. Pleasure's imminent. So this is silly.
You have a mini goal.
It wouldn't be hope or pleasure. It'd be hope of pleasure. Or hope as pleasure, but not hope or pleasure.
The mini goal, and you get rewarded. Or something can be an unpredicted outcome, right? And that will provoke threat or anxiety.
Like hope is not the conclusion. Hope would be what would cause the planned behavior sequence in the first place, if anything, or the continuation of the sequence. And incidentally, like sometimes you maintain the planned sequence of behavior even if the outcome is unpredicted. We're not entirely governed by predictability, and sometimes unpredicted outcomes are better. And you don't need to adjust course nonetheless. It just happens to work better than you expected.
Now, you'll notice here that promise and hope are also part of this, and we'll get into that in a second. Okay, so let's walk through this whole thing. Let's say my action, the frame, the point A and point B is I want to
There can be no true despair without hope.
drink this whole beer. I want to go from the unbearable present, not having drinking this beer, to the ideal future, having drunken this beer. So what do? Okay, I plan a sequence of behavior. Well, I'll sip the beer, I'll put it up to my mouth and drink it. And either a predicted outcome or an unpredicted outcome will occur. Now, chances are, if I sip the beer, you know, that's pretty much what happens. There's no unpredicted outcome there. And in that case, I just continue the sequence and continue that behavior until I finish the beer. But what happens if an unpredicted outcome...
Thank you, Ian Crone, for the $10. I really appreciate that. As a mythopoetic, I loathe Jordan Peterson. Keep fighting the good fight, Sunday. This will not be a good fight. This is going to be a deeply inglorious and painful fight. But I have committed.
...occurs. Let's say I'm drinking this beer, or I crack the beer open for the first time, and I sip it, and I go... Wait a second, this is not a beer, this is an IPA. I wanted beer.
An IPA is a beer. IPA is a beer. So.
And I predicted that I would taste beer, but instead I tasted the devil's urine. And what happens is...
The devil's urine tastes like orange peels, apparently, because that's what IPA tastes like. It's very citrusy and pulpy.
Now, because it's an
It's in the flavor of pulp. It doesn't have pulp in it. If your beer has pulp in it, something got into it.
Predicted outcome. I step back a little bit. Whoa, this interrupts my frame. There's now threat and anxiety. So what do? I need to generate and choose a new sequence. So what would that look like? Okay, well, normally I was just going to sit here and drink the beer, but now I have to go into this kitchen, dump the IPA out, throw the rest
IPA is light beer? IPA is typically stronger. Was that a joke? I don't get the joke.
of it out because I'm looking for beer. And then grab an actual beer, like a Shiner Bock. Okay, and then I come back and I've generated a new sequence. Well, what is it? Well, it's what I was doing previously, or what I demonstrated previously, to just drink the beer. Boom. And then that's the frame. That's point A to point B. Now, why does it say promise and hope next to threat and anxiety? Because promise and hope are up here. Why are they in lower parentheses here? Let's pick a different frame to explain this. Let's say I was supposed to get dinner with my friend. We had planned it. The unbearable present is not getting dinner with my friend. I'm all alone. Ideal state is having dinner with my friend. And I text him, and I said, hey, when are you picking me up? Blah, blah, blah. And I expect 6 o'clock or whatever. That would be the predicted outcome. But instead I get an unpredicted outcome. Hey, I can't make it. Oh, crap. Threat and anxiety. God, now I'm going to have to, spend the night alone or whatever. And it sucks. So I get threat and anxiety, and I have to generate a new sequence of behavior. But then I think, okay, in the process of generating a new sequence of behavior, what else am I going to do? I think, oh my God, I just bought Tostitos pizza rolls, and I have a whole bunch of them in my freezer. I can eat those. Boom. What was originally anxiety, I can now just have Totino's pizza rolls. And so the unpredicted outcome, which was not good, maybe not ideal, still presented promise and hope in a different regard. And so that's what generates a new sequence of behavior. And if the ideal future was, spending my night productively, well, it was originally going to be with a friend, but I've generated a new sequence of behavior to have Tostino's pizza rolls. Boom. That's how I've regenerated my frame in the hope of, in the face of an unpredicted outcome. Now, here's the cool thing. The cool thing is that this frame works at every level of analysis. So Peterson said this is a micro-personality. It's your personality manifesting itself at the most granular level. It can also manifest itself at the most abstract level. So, for example, if I have the beer, okay, point A to point B is drinking the beer. But it could also be something like live a good life, which is extremely abstract, almost too abstract to actually take any action on. Because here I am living my current life. I'd like to live a, good life that ends in the future sometime. And that's where this diagram comes in. Because
Please, God, let it end in the future sometime.
each abstract frame can be broken down into smaller frames, right? So the way it's set up is a little bit different on here, but family care. Okay, let's say the abstract goal is... take care of my family. Okay, let's say I have a kid, and my goal is take care of my child. Okay, well, that breaks down into, I gotta prepare food for my child. That's the most basic thing. So we get down to here, complete meal. But that even decomposes more, where I need to go, okay, I need to actually cut corn, set table, do dishes. And so when your personality is manifesting itself moment to moment, it's doing it in those individual mini frames. So this single action is a frame that gets exhausted once I'm done with that, and then I move into the next frame.
You haven't explained what a personality is or why it breaks down into this structure. You're just kind of assuming that personality at the highest level of resolution breaks down into a diagrammatic set of priorities that can be tiered in this way. We need an explanation of what personality is and how on earth you determine that this is actually how things work. You can't just say this. It's not enough just to concoct a coherent looking structure and then just apply it to something and say, there, look, we've done science. That's not how you do this.
and they make up these bigger frames, and that's what builds in a hierarchy of abstraction. Okay, so we'll end with this full image
Was there diagram trees, not maps? You can treat diagrams as maps.
and prove once and for all that Nathan Robinson doesn't know what he's talking about when he accuses it of being unprovable gibberish. So
How would you prove this? This rests, like, you haven't proved it, you just explained its internal structure. But that's not a proof. Like, L. Ron Hubbard's description of thetans is like a coherent structure. That doesn't mean it's proved.
we have our frame. Okay, let's go back to the beer. Any frame I'm operating in,
Please.
I have some level
Thought I
of known
should've gotten beer for
information,
this.
but most of the world around me, I don't even know what's going on, right? Like, I'm here in my apartment, I know the building is stable, but at any point, anything could go wrong, and, there's an infinite number of factors out there. And so that's chaos. That's the unknown, right? There's so many unknowns surrounding the frame I'm in. My information is limited. So what happens when anomalous information arises from the unknown?
This dude doesn't even have a good beard. Hope you beat his ass in the debate tonight, Sunday. His beard is fantastic, unfortunately. I don't have him there.
Into my frame. So, for example, let's say I'm drinking the beer, right? I'm standing here.
That's a well-groomed, well-trimmed beard.
I take a sip. Wait a second. This isn't beer. It's not even IPA. It's anthrax or arsenic or some sort of poison. I thought I was drinking beer, and it turns out it's poison, right? And that's anomalous information to the nth degree, because that will kill me, right? So what happens? This new information came through, and I could make a different example. Maybe a bomb goes off outside my...
Does anyone find it funny that he's circumferenced chaos in a delimited fashion as the unknown? I just find that hilarious. I know it doesn't mean anything, but it's just funny that he has compartmentalized the world so that chaos is self-contained. I don't know. It's funny to me.
my window or something, and now the frame that I was in, disintegrates. That's what disintegration is. Anomalous information comes forth from the unknown, it destroys the frame that you're in, and you disintegrate. So what do you have to do? Well, you have to develop
No, anomalous works here. Anomalous means that it's not consistent with whatever frame of reference you're operating within. So the information submergence constitutes an anomaly, so it's anomalous. So that's fine.
new frame. So if I was drinking arsenic or a bomb goes off or something that destroys the frame I was in of drinking beer, now I have to go, okay, well, I need to do something new. I need to go to the hospital. Oh, crap, I just drank arsenic, or my arm just blew off or something. Okay, what do I do? What's my sequence of behavior? We'll start again. I'll pick up my phone, call 911. Oh, crap, my phone's out of battery. Unpredicted outcome. Now I'm freaking out. I have to generate a new sequence of behavior in order to get to the hospital. So I run downstairs, knock on my neighbor's door. Hey, I'm dying. I just drank arsenic or my arm's blown off. Can you take me to the hospital? Right? And that is the reintegration of stability, right? The reintegration of, I was in a frame, something new happened, it blew it out, now I have to go into a completely new frame with a different ideal state. And so that's what this diagram represents. And so the reason that frame is useful is because what it allows you to do is, or what it's allowed me to do is, any action that I'm taking, like making this video, I spent several hours making this video, I screwed up in many ways, and my neck hurts from looking down, and I gotta fix all this stuff. And what I do is, okay, I can contextualize, here's what I'm doing in the moment to moment. I can edit, I can speak, I have my limited frame. But by recognizing that I can take that limited way of viewing the world at the most granular level, I can expand it out and go, all right, how does this fit into my future goals, right? And I have to contextualize things. I go, okay, well, what do I want out of this? I don't know, what is this video meant to achieve? Well, it's meant to communicate something. It's meant to practice even communicating in this format, because I really do like standing up, I like speaking extemporaneously, and I want to do more of it. So even just if the ideal state is putting this out there for my regular viewers to, give some feedback on and say, hey, this sucked or whatever, you need to explain it differently, that's useful. But it's also working on speaking and editing and doing different things. And so I'm really tired, and I just appreciate everyone.
Me too, brother. Me too. Well, oh god, I feel so gross. We will be fine. We will survive. Why you need weird maps to explain simple things. Hey guys, no insulting the guests. Young 100% believed chaos was only at the macro, the micro was ordered. To be fair, a lot of IPAs are made at best, so I don't drink them. There are some good IPAs. The Numbskull one I have is decent. Strong though. Well, let's see. P.F. Young, FD Signifier.
Peterson's rhetoric has become a useful tool for legitimizing white supremacist and fascist movements and validating regressive and oppressive ideologies and policies in westernized nations.
That's no paranoid delusion.
And if you extrapolate his rhetoric to its logical endpoint, then you recognize that he sees chaos as a world where white men are no longer centered in major institutions of power. He doesn't, and that's the problem. The queer and transphobia are indicative of the endpoint to Peterson's unique form of weepy, gentle-voiced fascism. Peterson has this evolved.
I'm gonna go deal with things make me minimally functional for the debate. I'll be back in about 5-6 minutes. Almighty Pork Chop says, "What song is this? I'm trying to have sex to this." You wait until I'm off the screen to have sex to my stream. You come into my house. Unbelievable. No respect. Okay. Let's see what's going on here. Have they joined the call yet? Is Wick even live yet? Hang on. It is time. Let's see. Oh, I guess we're doing it in the server, of course. Stupid. Here, let's get that up.
I don't like sweeping generalizations, but no one who calls themselves progressive is a genuine person.
That was a good line to enter on. How are you two?
I'm confused, but here we are. You're gonna have to elaborate on that one, buddy. What do you mean by that?
And let me just be clear, I do not paint with broad brushes, okay? But every single person who calls themselves progressives is a asshole and doesn't know what they're talking about.
I have no retort.
Fair enough. We're gonna just let that one hang there, and the audience can judge what to do with it as they go. Sunday. Speaking of broads and brushes, how are you?
Here, let me turn you down a little. Actually, why are you so loud?
Speaking of broads and brushes, who's the broad and who's the brush in this regard?
Sorry, what were you asking me, Wick?
How's it going?
Oh, I feel like death. How are you?
Oh well, I'm excited. I'm nervous. I feel like this has potential to be either very interesting or very not, and so I'm curious how this is going to go.
You and me both. I've warned you in advance. There's a possibility just because I may not be able to stay for much of the audience questions. I will try to persevere, but got a limited amount of dignity I need to maintain. My face is on screen after all.
Are you, is that...
for what it's worth, I've got no dignity left to maintain.
Is that your medicine? Is that Daddy's medicine right there? Is that
this is exactly
full
what
of
it
good
is.
stuff?
Exactly.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, don't get too drunk.
I have enough to... This is all I've got. I've got enough to last me for the debate, and that's it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, then I shall waste no more time on frivolities and fun. We're going to get to the serious business of discussion. Young reached out to me and asked me to host a conversation on Jordan Peterson's Maps of Meaning. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Young, self-proclaimed Jordan Peterson fan, is going to be talking with President Sunday, self-proclaimed
progressive
alcoholic. And this
I'm not an alcoholic. I can quit anytime I like.
Also, I'm not a Jordan Peterson fan. One of my more popular videos is why I no longer call myself a Jordan Peterson fan. So this is already slander.
You're more of a groinal cryo cooler, aren't you?
More of a what?
I'm not going to explain that.
Okay, I don't know what's going on, but with that,
I don't use more than 3-syllable words.
I'm gonna
Wick, apparently you're echoing. I'm trying to figure out if that's on my end.
Oh,
but I don't.
Is it on my end?
Fine on my end.
I'm not hearing it in my ears, and I don't think I have any other sources of audio that could be picking up. So I don't know. Yeah, I only see one person. Yeah, no echo. Okay, it was just one person being weird. They probably have two tabs open. Sorry, continue.
Okay, fair enough. No, that's fine. They're probably watching all three of us.
Your audience is low IQ, Sunday.
Well, they're higher IQ than me, so that doesn't bode well.
Before we get into all that's fine. We're gonna get into it, I'm sure. But I wanted to give the floor to Young at first to explain Maps of Meaning, why he likes this, if he does, and what his general take on this is. And that will hopefully spark the discussion and start it. I'll jump in with questions I might have, and then we'll just kind of get things going. Does that sound good to everyone?
Sounds good to me. Mr. President, do you give it your executive seal of approval?
Thumbs up. Let's go. What you got for us?
Well, here's the deal. All right, my opinion is very straightforward, very simple, very correct. Maps of Meaning is one of the most, if not the most, important, influential, and correct philosophical texts produced in the last 150 years. Primarily because of it's got a lot of claims, and Sunday is a scholar. He's read through the whole thing several times. He knows there's a multitude of claims. I would like to hone in on a few of them.
It's like 400 pages.
Most notably, and I don't know. We'll see what Sunday thinks. I believe he said Maps of Meaning is insane. Or the title of his video was something like Jordan Peterson is insane or Maps of Meaning is insane, which is of course nonsense.
Either or.
The claims in Maps of Meaning are very important. It's that everyone is religious, and that religion and mythological stories contain and serve as epistemologically valid in the same way that rational Socratic dialogue is epistemologically valid. If you believe in the power of arriving at knowledge through Socratic dialogue, you should also recognize the implicit knowledge that is encoded in religious mythology and religious stories. Religions are adaptive features of evolution. They contained within them wisdom. And religious traditions create wise behavior. Sometimes, obviously, religious traditions can be awful. Depends on the tradition. But the deepest traditions, they are the ones that guide our civilization. Our very Western civilization, the United States, I dare say, was founded on religious principles indisputably. And you cannot make moral claims in the framework of the West without appealing to those religious claims, because everyone is religious. So says the Map of Meaning. And I challenge you, Mr. President, I challenge you to dispute that.
All right. Do I just have carte blanche to just take like between 5 and 10 minutes to just give my opening thing? Because I didn't really
take
shorten
11 if you want.
11 it is. All right. So Jordan Peterson's Maps of Meaning is an incoherent mess. On the very first page of chapter 1, we have a blatant contradiction. Peterson writes, quote, "The world can be validly construed as forum for action or as place of things. The former manner of interpretation, more primordial and less clearly understood, finds its expression in the arts or humanities, in ritual, drama, literature, and mythology. The world as forum for action is a place of value, a place where all things have meaning. This meaning, which is shaped as a consequence of social interaction, is implication for action, or at a higher level of analysis, for the configuration of the interpretive schema that produces or guides action." One paragraph down, Peterson then writes, quote, "Adherents of the mythological worldview tend to regard the statements of their creeds as indistinguishable from empirical fact, even though such statements were generally formulated long before the notion of objective reality emerged." Unquote. Peterson here is essentially claiming that the mythological worldview is one which simultaneously views the world as a forum for action, where meaning is shaped as a consequence of social action, but also that statements from within it predate the notion of objective reality. This is an absurdity, as the idea that we now term objective reality consists precisely in that the world is understood as a forum between subjects. Peterson also makes wild and outdated anthropological claims, often apropos of nothing. For instance, Peterson claims that, quote, "the natural, quote-unquote, pre-experimental or mythical mind is in fact primarily concerned with meaning, which is essentially implication for action, and not with objective nature," unquote. And that, quote, "it has taken centuries of firm discipline and intellectual training, religious and proto-scientific and scientific, to produce a mind capable of concentrating on phenomena that are not yet or are no longer immediately intrinsically gripping, to produce a mind that regards real as something separable from relevant," unquote. And it's, quote, "this non-trivial remainder that enables the scientist, the modern scientist, to retain undimmed enthusiasm while endlessly studying his fruit flies," unquote. That pre-modern humans were incapable of focusing on things whose meaning is yet to be assigned is simply claimed on the basis of nothing. No citation or argument is provided. It is simply assumed by Peterson to be a fact. Had Peterson been minimally conversant with the fields in which he is dabbling, he would have been aware of contemporaries like Claude Lévi-Strauss, Bruno Latour, or etc., hardly alone by the time Maps of Meaning was written in 1999, if memory serves, who directly addresses such claims of primitive blindness by pointing out that the very possibility, for instance, of the development of things like medicine, cooking, etc., in pre-modern communities involved extensive focusing upon, categorizing, experimenting on, and remembering the differences between a vast array of elements and objects whose usefulness is not immediately apparent, and to a degree that many modern scientists would find daunting. It is also simply a silly assertion. People told lies, made up stories, committed fraud, performed illusions, and otherwise scammed one another, and caught each other doing it long before, quote, centuries of firm discipline and intellectual training, religious, proto-scientific, and scientific, unquote, had taken place, and they marked the difference between relevance and reality quite effectively. Here's another example where Peterson describes the Sumerians. Quote, their descriptions of reality, to which we attribute the qualities of proto-science, in fact comprise their summary of the world as phenomenon, as place to act. They did not know this, not explicitly, any more than we do, but it was still true, unquote. Quick aside, I don't know who Peterson has in mind when he says we, because he cites nobody, but this was not the prevailing attitude in anthropology at the time Peterson was writing. Despite the aforementioned claims being of a very specifically anthropological nature, Peterson is content where he cites anyone at all to liberally quote better writers without context. The reader is simply left to accept that they do the work Peterson needs them to, apparently, and to use the speculations of men like, primarily, Carl Jung as license to improvise in place of doing actual analysis. As something pretending to be an academic work, this citational absence is critical. Here's a mundane example of what results. One would think, given that the narrative focus of Maps of Meaning and its heavy use of personal anecdote in the introduction, Peter would strongly value fidelity in giving his experiential and motivational history. That is indeed what Maps of Meaning is fundamentally all about. Yet, although while in the introduction to, I can't even fucking speak, dear God. Although, while in the introduction to Maps of Meaning, he claims to have initially pursued political science before psychology because he wanted to learn about the structure of human beliefs, in his 2014 personality lecture on Alexander Solzhenitsyn, a mere 5 years after the first edition of Maps of Meaning was published, he claims that he pursued political science because, quote, I wanted to know why people went to war, unquote. Neither questions, by the way, are within the purview of political science. The reason why I bring up this seemingly petty point is because, just as with his descriptions of the scientific versus the mythological worldviews given earlier, Peterson is terribly reliant on his own deeply unreliable mental recollection of narrative details to justify sweeping characterizations of peoples, traditions, disciplines, worldviews, and of the human mind generally. Actually, doing the work of an academic and justifying his claims with well-contextualized citations may have spared him from this. So in sum, I consider the book worse than worthless because, as well as being incoherent and containing, as far as I'm concerned, no useful information, it seems to trick many uneducated readers into thinking they've actually learned something when in fact their curiosity has been prematurely plugged with ignorant conjecture masquerading as analysis. The book is also overlong and very boring, and given the general failure of academics to make positive use of it, for a decades-long book it has an impressively low citation count, a good omen that academic rigor in the humanities is not as dead as some have proclaimed. The onus is on my opponent to prove its worth despite these insurmountable shortcomings. Thank you.
Okay, $10 from Aaron M. Sound to say Wick rules, pay him. Also, you may need to hit the wrap it up B-light, your call. Fair enough. Have you been plugged in your curiosity cut short, P.F. Young? Is that how you feel? What's wrong with our friend Sunday's analysis?
Every single word that came flying out of his alcohol-laden mouth is nothing but tomfoolery.
This is my first drink of the night.
First off, Mr. President.
By the way, can I see your bookshelf?
Buy me dinner first. We'll see how this debate goes.
You guys can compare it to each other shelf size later. Okay.
Yeah. We can compare bookshelves after this. Okay.
But I want to see what those are. I can't see them from here.
Listen. We will. I have the blur thing on or whatever. It's called aperture focus. Listen.
Just turn it on.
There was a large amount of criticism in Maps of Meaning, pointing out some contradictions. Okay, that's fine. It's a 400-page textbook, so I'm sure you can take two isolated passages and without context say they mean something the opposite. But let's get to the actual ideas here, Mr. Sunday.
Okay.
Because while I am no longer a Jordan Peterson fan, at least not publicly or officially, I am a Maps of Meaning superfan. I believe the ideas laid out in Maps of Meaning are truly significant. You properly pointed out that a key claim in Maps of Meaning is the world is dualistic in many ways. There's the world as a place of action, which is phenomenology, a place of experience, actually experiencing the world, a place of qualia, and then the world as a material, objective place, a place of things, a place of
Not exactly.
science
One of
and
the
quantity and
one of the
whatnot.
problems with his initial argument here is not that he distinguishes between, for example, qualitative experience and stuff that is not dependent on qualitative experience. I think a lot of theorists can sort of fruitfully depend on that distinction, even if there are people who challenge it.
Sure.
When he says though that the former one is validly construed as a forum for action, this is no longer something purely qualitative. This is now something definitionally objective. It exists between subjects.
Yes.
Sort of baked
So
into
here's
language,
one of the well. Let's go to the meat of the claim here, because he lays out all his preface stuff, and he eventually gets to the claim, which many people have seen. Many an ignorant Peterson hater has seen Peterson say everyone is religious.
I don't
There
hate
are
him.
no real.
I knew about that
atheists.
quote from the Solzhenitsyn thing, so I used to watch him a lot.
Well, let's let Young get his.
It's a
stuff
back and
out.
forth. I'm gonna he can get it out.
Jesus Christ, Mr. Sunday. This
I know,
is ridiculous,
but
Mr.
back
President.
and forth means he gets his point out, because he prefaces his point, he sets it up, he does the check engine light on his plane, does a pre-flight checklist, but before he's able to take off, you come in like, whoa.
Yep.
We gotta let him take off.
Okay.
Let him
Yep.
fly a little bit. and then
102
you cut him
millimeter
out.
SAM installation, taking me out like Progonov or whoever the Russian was that tried to do a
Prigozhin?
coup that got taken out. Prigozhin, yes. You just Prigozhin me, right? My Wagner group is now in free fall because of you interrupting me in the middle of my point. Jordan Peterson, many an atheist Peterson hater, is upset with Peterson because he claims that everyone is religious. Do you agree, because you're obviously an incredibly intelligent person, I would assume you would agree, that everyone is religious, yes?
Depends on what you mean by religious.
That's true. Well, obviously, every word depends on what you mean by word. But could you agree? Do you have any problem with Peterson saying that everyone is religious?
Depends on how he qualifies it. So, for example,
According to how he qualifies it in Maps of Meaning.
couldn't recall. Does he mention that in the first chapter? That's what I reviewed.
Okay.
Maybe this will be helpful. Can you explain what Jordan Peterson means by that for my
Yes.
audience who
Please,
has
that would
not
be
read
helpful,
it?
yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So here's the claim. I mean, it's a bit. Unfortunately, I learned this the hard way after about a year arguing with some Christian apologists. It's a bit presuppositionalist. But essentially, no one. Well, here's the overview. Every single society in every culture, in every place across the entirety of human history, has come up with religious stories. That's indisputably factual. Stories are told, and they have a similar pattern across them. Tribes, independent and completely isolated from each other, will tell very similar stories of flood myths, of a trickster god, various different things. And the
Quick
answers
clarifying
to
question?
that, let me lay it out entirely, and then you can clarify.
Okay.
This is the idea of the monomyth. Joseph Campbell. People have probably heard of this. Where
Hero
there
with
is
the
a
thousand
commonality.
faces.
Exactly. There's a commonality in the structure of mythological stories across
Weirdly, Peterson
humanity.
ignores
What that
doesn't he?
indicates.
Sorry.
What that indicates is that there is a objective, quote unquote, there are biological factors that parameterize the kinds of stories we tell. And you can broadly call these the archetypes. The archetypal structure of mythology are the objective parameters of which said mythology is told. And the significance of that is that I assume everyone here believes in evolution. It's possible that, we have some Peterson haters.
Well, no, because if evolution was true, why would there be monkeys?
Evolution. True. So,
Or
check this out.
streamers. But go on.
One and the same. Evolution selected for certain stories to be told, because if the stories that were told and the stories that people imitated, because when you tell a story, people embody it. So, like The Boy Who Cried Wolf is a story. That the story has an obvious lesson. The Boy Who Cried Wolf is if you call for help too many times when you don't need it, no one will come to your aid. That's a valuable story. For people who internalize that lesson, they have an advantage. Extrapolate that out to fitness and so on. So over a long, many thousands of year period of time, the best stories, the stories that tell people how to live life in the most effective way, let's just say from a Darwinian perspective, from the perspective of increasing fitness, those stories get consolidated and distilled into religious stories. And that's the process behind it. And how it relates to morality today is that in the United States, you cannot make a moral claim. You cannot have a moral system a functioning moral system that is not fundamentally predicated on appeals to religious claims. Like, for example, the
Land that
idea
plane, brother.
that God created man in his own image and God created man with inalienable rights, so on and so forth. You cannot make a moral claim without appealing to religion.
I didn't hear a definition of religion in there.
Everyone is religious if you are making moral claims. In a Western
Okay,
context.
but
If you believe-
what does it mean to be religious, though? Like, what specifically are you adding to the sentence
it
when you say it's
means,
religious?
if you're a religious person,
Yeah.
it means that the moral framework you operate in has, at its base, at its fundamental axiomatic level, religious, non-rational claims.
Okay, but what
like,
what
for
makes,
example,
what makes a
like, for
claim
example,
religious specifically? What is the
it's
what is
faith-based.
the religious
It's not
factor?
rational. You cannot derive it from out of pure rationality. Like, the idea that all men are created equal is a non-rational claim. That's a religious claim.
Yeah, but I don't think people necessarily have to hold that in the same sense as they hold, for example, belief in like a supernatural being or in the rightness or wrongness of some act or something like that. Like, you can hold that in like a tangential
Is a
kind of way.
belief in a supernatural being or a god a requirement to be a religious belief?
Not at all. In fact, the most religious people are people who claim to be atheists, for example, or people who don't view religion in any classic way.
I
For
agree with the
example,
not
give
at
you a
all part, but that's where we
I'll give you a
end off.
perfect example. Give you a perfect example. Sports fans who kill each other over their sports team, right? We all know this. We've seen images of people burning shit down and literally killing people. Those people who are willing to kill another human being over a sports symbol of an arbitrary... Mr. Sunday,
I'm listening.
I would appreciate if you do not yawn in the middle of my epic rant.
That was a sigh.
Okay, because it really deflates me.
I'm sick.
It was a sigh.
But quick
good
question
report.
though.
Hold
Quick-
on, let me
quick
finish my
clarifying-
point.
But that you did.
A sports fan who is willing to kill another human being over their sport is more religious than a so-called Christian who never goes to church and never prays. And that's obvious.
All right, but you say religious and irrational. So what is the distinction between the two? What make because clearly not
Maybe
just
not.
the merely irrational isn't equivalent to the religious, because we can imagine a whole lot of things that are irrational that aren't religious, or at the very least operate at a level where religion
Okay,
would be a
but I'm
superfluous
saying-
descriptor.
Young, you gotta let him finish in the same way.
All right, you know what?
I
I liked you at the beginning of this, Wick, and now
Of
Sunday,
course,
let's tell Wick to
everyone
fuck off.
doesn't
No, I'm
like
just
the
kidding.
ref when the ref is trying to get the other team some
Right,
space.
doing makeup calls.
Sunday, please go ahead.
What's the specific content of the word religious/religion when you use it? Like, if you had to put it in a dictionary, what does it
Okay.
say?
The fundamental axioms on which you base your actions. Those are your religious axioms.
So in a game of chess, the
Mm-hmm.
the grid of squares
Yep.
is a religion.
No.
That's the
'cause
fundamental.
game-
That's a fundamental axis on which I base my action when I'm playing chess.
Yes, the game of
Axioms,
chess is not
sorry.
a person. It's the fundamental axioms that a person operates by. That's their religion. The thing that they hold in their highest and deepest regard is their religion.
Well, you
And
don't
that's the example
necessarily
of
you
this.
don't necessarily hold
That's
your
why I
axioms
said
in-
the sports
No,
example.
but hang on a sec. You don't necessarily hold your axioms in highest and deepest regard. Sometimes you just sort of take them banally for granted. Sometimes you even think
True.
that. Sometimes
Most people
you
don't
even,
know their axioms.
But then they don't hold them in highest regard, do they? Regard is focused and intentional and conscious. It's regarding.
Okay, well, that's I don't know. That's a semantic thing. We could argue about that. That's
Well, a
not
little
that
bit, but that's why I'm asking you for the meaning of your word, because I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay, I feel like I've said this a few times, and I've illustrated this.
Okay,
I'll
but
try
if
one
you
more
said
time.
it a few times, maybe try saying something different, because it's clearly not working.
That's true. He's got me there. So I'll try it this way.
Okay.
You cannot make a moral statement about like slavery being wrong or it's wrong to murder without appealing to a fundamental axiom that is ultimately faith-based as opposed to rationally derived. Meaning,
I refute thee thus. Slavery is
Okay.
wrong. There.
okay, why
I
is
did it.
you cannot justify it. So justify why slavery is wrong for me.
Slavery is wrong because I really don't like it when people engage in slavery. It hurts people I like very, very much, and I will do everything in my power to hurt you very, very much if you do it.
Yeah, but
What if we only enslaved the people you didn't like, though?
The world would be a better place.
Okay. Then slavery isn't wrong. Slavery of the people you like is wrong.
Exactly. Just like the good book says.
Fair enough.
What's the
That's
difference
not how I
between?
expected him to answer that.
Someone in my chat asked a good question. Actually, I wonder if maybe this would help clarify.
Well, someone has to ask a good question here.
True. That's why I have them. So somebody asked, what, in your judgment, is the difference between an axiom and a psychological predisposition? Maybe that'll clarify things a little bit.
That's there's probably some overlap there.
Really?
A psychological predisposition.
Well, because axioms are typically taken to be the presumptions of a logical system, and you can sort of hold them in
Right.
suspension, right? Like you can hold them conjecturally, or what's the word I'm looking for? Provisionally. But things that are psychological predispositions, they aren't held provisionally in the same way. They're kind of underlying assumptions that typically, as soon as you become aware of them, you are able to challenge them and usurp them. But then what's doing that in that case?
For clarity,
Yes.
Sunday, may I ask, in your view of a disposition, as you're using the term, can dispositions, psychological dispositions specifically, be changed or influenced or adapt over time? Or are they fixed? Are they immutable? Are they simply there and there is nothing we can do to change
Stop them.
What's going on? You ask
I'm
me that or
simply
Sunday?
asking if dispositions, psychological dispositions, as he's using it, are fixed and immutable, unchanging, or if there's something that can be influenced and changed over time through either conscious or unconscious actions and behaviors, experiences that we have, etc.
Whether that the answer yes or no to that, I don't think is relevant to the disagreement we have here. Okay, or at least a presumed disagreement. Maybe you're a Maps of Meaning
Yeah,
super
I
fan
just
more
want
than
to know.
I
I'm just curious. Okay. Like,
listen.
Well, I mean, if I may.
you asked me to be a participant as well as a
hang on.
moderator. You said, "Hey,
Wait, he
do you
did?
want to join
But
in
then
the
I realized we
discussion?"
only need a moderator.
This is your fault? Actually, I think I might have asked you that, Wick. God, what the hell was I thinking? Must have been drunk at the time. It seems.
Sent you a
I think
pattern.
one of the things that's causing me a little bit of trouble here is that it seems like when you say everybody is religious, all you really mean is that everybody thinks in a way that you can sort of characterize consistently in a short span of time, which is trivially obvious, but I still don't know what adding the word religious to it is helping at all. And and when you say
I'll tell you
when
how.
you say like atheists are more religious than anybody else, you seem to say so pretty
I'm atheist.
apropos of nothing, because what you've described includes literally everybody on Earth by your own claim. So
If I'll use the example of the sports fan again. If a sports fan, Wick, you tell me as the neutral moderator, if a sports fan is willing to murder someone of a rival sports team, and I say that person is like is acting like a religious fanatic, a zealot, a fanatic, a religious, is that person not in? Do you understand what I mean when people when
I
you say that
understand
that's
the
religious?
argument.
if I may,
Now,
it
I would
seems
say,
like
I would say there's a reason. I'm making a utilitarian argument to some degree of why we should characterize it like that, because when you understand that disagreements of that nature, or specifically like political disagreements, this is where the rubber really meets the road. Everyone knows what I mean when I say politics is like a religion. Everyone knows what we mean by that.
I don't
Of course you
necessarily
do.
know
If you understand the sports, if you understand the sports analogy, you understand the political.
yeah. Well,
analogy.
the issue I have with the sports
So
analogy is
that-
that it
hold
seems
on,
like
let me
you're.
drive it home.
Stop. I want to hear
The
Sunday's
reason
issue with
it
the
isn't-
stop. I want to hear Sunday's issue with the sports analogy. I think this is going to drive the conversation forward. If we hear this
Okay.
issue, then we can
All right.
address this issue, and maybe we
All
can.
right.
It seems like when you say that, obviously the sports analogy, well, obviously the fanatical sports fan is analogous, is the consequence of using the words like fanatic and zealous to describe them. It's not because there's something essential about the word religion as it's been used in a coherent sense that actually applies here. It's just because they seem to resemble on a superficial level, at a cartoon level really, the fanaticism we attribute to religious zealots in the media. So frothing at the mouth, people wanting to burn witches at the stake. But that doesn't seem to me to have much in the way of anthropologically useful content.
I don't see how it's cartoonish when we're talking about someone killing someone else over a symbol. That's the definition of religious conflict.
Well, it's not really the definition of religious conflict, because there
In
are...
some ways it is.
Well, no, because you still have yet to define the religious in a way that actually sticks. So you're insisting that it's religious by dint of it being what it is, but it stands in need of any kind of justification. So when you say something is religious, it seems like what you actually leverage when pressed to give an explanation is this resembles tropes of religion in media, but you actually can't seem to give a definition of the religious as a category by itself. So for me, for example, this is a subject I have a particular interest in. When I look at the etymological use of religion historically and I look at its transformations over time, what I see primarily is the emergence of an idea that there are particular sets of practices and creeds and ideas about which there's a certain kind of cultural and emotional intensity, and the religious tends to be classified according to that rubric. In its earliest use, the root religio referred literally just to a vague intensity about a thing. Now, if you wanted to go that route, or something along those lines, I could concede, sure, religio is probably, maybe it could be specified a little bit better, but, it's the basis of something that could probably be useful for describing certain types of social activity or whatnot. Like, the intensity about a thing is a thing that comes up in a lot of political science. Carl Schmitt talks about the political as being most present in the most intense distinction between friend and enemy and things like that. And there's a scalar order of intensity there. And you can draw a connection between religion and politics that way. But it seems what you're doing is you're relying upon the aesthetics of religious fanaticism in order to drive your definition of religion. I just don't think it's that compelling.
I'm sure you don't think it's that compelling. It would be advantageous if you did not believe the person you're debating with is making compelling points. I don't know what you mean by aesthetics of religion.
The appearances of what we associate with religion, or appearances.
The behaviors of the people involved.
How is that aesthetics? That's the fundamental issue at hand. Is the behavior that religion is relating to?
The point I'm making is that the appearance does not actually belie an underlying structural commonality.
Okay. Let me give a different example to try and draw this distinction once again. Okay.
Wish I had more whiskey.
Religion has to do with the deepest phenomenological experiences, the deepest parts of reality, in terms of the deepest moments of intense meaning. We can call those. People would say, "Well, I had a religious experience. I went to a concert and I had a religious experience."
Sure.
Now, that obviously, in my world, whether or not there's supernatural superficiality overlaid about it, I don't believe in the supernatural that much, other than when I'm legally taking psychedelics, in which case God likes to convince me otherwise. But I don't believe when a Christian goes to a Christian rock band concert that they're literally infused with the spirit of God. I believe that the emotional experience, the physiological response that a religious person, a classically religious person, a Christian, is having to Christian music is exactly the same physiological response an atheist will have when they go see their favorite band at a secular concert. So
so we're characterizing religion as a physiological response, so an intense physiological / psychological response to a thing. Is that a fair representation?
Certainly, it's part of it. The deepest physiological response is a reductive measure of what I'm pointing out. The deepest emotional experiences that guides one's behaviors, i.e., killing another.
Well, emotions are physiologically emergent. Wouldn't you agree?
All right, let us. I am not sure. It doesn't sound like you have that much disagreement with what I'm saying, which is why I'm curious as to why you said your piece of the absent meaning was insane.
I think I got a lot. I think I got quite a few disagreements with what you're saying.
Okay.
Well, right now we're trying to figure out what is being said. I think that's what we're.
Yeah.
We're
and I feel like Sender is purposely being pedantic and not addressing my
possible.
points.
I wish I had the surplus of energy to do so.
I wish I was higher to have a more effective metaphysical conversation with you.
Yeah, that's not typically how you want to go about doing that.
That's exactly how you want to go about doing that.
Okay, how about this? So, you characterize the religious as being emblemized by let's sort of meld our language a little bit by the intensity associated with somebody wanting to kill another person. So, a sports fan is obviously religious because they've gone so far as to kill another person.
Yes.
However, the thing about the things you hold in highest regard in your axioms is that for you to follow through on them, you need to be in some kind of state of mind that is representative of some kind of stable structure. Otherwise, when you're referring to stable things like axioms and stable things like the thing you hold in highest regard in the present tense, you run into a few difficulties. Like, for example, somebody who's drunk may suddenly not regard those things in the same way, or the things they hold in highest regard might not register, or they might act impulsively, etc., etc.
Yeah, but their impulsivities are guided by their axioms.
But they're not, is precisely my point. Because their
And
impulsivity...
I'm saying that's wrong.
No, their impulsivity may be directed by their axioms. I'm granting that just for the sake of argument here. I disagree with that, but let's grant that for the moment. Their impulsivities may be directed according to their axioms when they're sober, but when they're drunk, maybe not so much. Do their axioms change when they're drunk? Is that something you're going to contend?
First off, any true drunk would know that when you're really drunk, your inhibitions are let down.
You really want to argue about
axioms,
what drunks think with Sunday?
Well, I think
your
he's just...
true
I think,
axioms
well, hang on.
come forth.
He's just established that I'm actually not an alcoholic, so...
Right. Your true axioms come forth when you're in a disinhibited state like that.
Why do you think so?
Why do I think so?
Yeah.
In vino
Why?
veritas and wine?
No.
Because alcohol impedes prefrontal motor cortex activity, which is the inhibitory part of the brain, inhibiting your otherwise more base instincts.
Don't you think your inhibitions are also a part of your personality?
Yeah, true.
So then how would an absence? How would an absence of a part of your personality be more true to your personality?
Let me give you an example.
That seems to be the opposite. That's a mutation of your personality. That's
a heroin addict or a cocaine addict will tell you there are many. Tell me if you disagree with this. There are many cocaine or let's just say drug addicts who deny that they are addicts and yet are addicts nonetheless. Do you disagree with that?
Sure.
You do disagree or you do not disagree?
I don't disagree. Sorry.
There are many addicts who they themselves would not regard themselves as addicts. Okay, those addicts will deny being motivated by the desire for whatever their drug of choice is, and yet all of their actions will converge, all of their impulses, conscious or otherwise, which is there's no such thing as a conscious impulse, but conscious or unconscious actions will converge on satisfying the addiction, acquiring that drug. That is their religion to them, whether or not they articulate it.
But wouldn't you agree though that there is a distinction therefore in the axioms of someone who is not addicted to drugs and the axioms of someone who has become addicted to drugs?
Yeah, one's a drug addict and the other's not.
True, but do not intoxicatory substances affect your judgments and therefore ramifications, your axioms, of those that drive you?
Because right about now, I'd light up a joint, and we would loosen up, and we'd really get into this. Okay.
Well, I'm in Canada.
Where are we going? I just have to interject. Where is this going, and how?
That's what I'm trying to figure out right now. Look, I'm
as stumped as you are.
The reason we're all stumped. This is a phenomenal situation to be in. No one knows what anyone else is talking about.
Why don't we direct it a little bit, if I may? Unless you want to argue about this point that we don't know what the point is, perhaps I can maybe.
Yeah. Why don't you ground it for us? Okay?
Maybe I can drive the discussion a little bit.
Do it.
I guess I would start because I'm pretty sure I know what you're trying to get at, but I think you got to speak Sunday. I don't think you speak the same language. So let me try to translate a little bit, and maybe that'll help. So, Mr. President, sir, do we think, or how do you feel about the statement that there are many in the political world, the sports world, worlds that aren't traditionally seen as religious, that exhibit behaviors that are very similar, if not identical, to what you would see from a religious fanatic or a zealot? So, for example, someone who, for lack of a better word, worships, right, idea or an ideal.
Well, I don't just agree with that. That's a premise of my critique. The problem is that superficial similarity is not a basis to point to a common underlying structure generating it. That's not sufficient. And the problem is that Peterson's maps of meaning is filled with, in the portions that I reread for this debate, it is filled with conjecture on the basis of surface level activity as to the underlying structure. You can't do psychology that way. You don't infer a structure from its outward presentation. You simply infer the existence of a structure, the existence of something producing it, not the particularities of it. And that's what he does.
Wick, could you understand what he just said?
I don't think it was very complicated.
But I understand.
Yeah, did you understand what Sunday?
Yes, I think what he's saying is that just simply because let me translate. to speak some Young for a minute. So what he is trying to say is that
Yo, what up, bro? Let's smoke some weed. Go ahead.
okay, no. So what Sunday, as I understand, is saying is that simply because they share similarities in behavior does not mean they spring from the same source. That these behaviors, while similar, while even identical in some ways, are not springing from the same source as someone who would behave in this and through a religious structure. Is that a correct interpretation of what you're saying, Sunday?
That's good enough.
Or am I wrong? Good enough for government work. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, on that point specifically, going back to the music example, that's obviously incorrect because it is exactly the same physiological action that is occurring.
How do you know?
Action is the wrong word. You are inhabiting the exact same physiological state whether you're listening to religious music or whether you're listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers. Okay? It's the same. The music, the structure of the music, which is independent of the lyrics in many ways, often, not always, but often, the music, which is a pattern independent of rational articulation, your body is adapted to be attuned to that pattern. Your body enters a physiological space, an emotional space, based on that pattern, and that is exactly the same for religious people as non-religious people.
How do you know?
How else could it be unless you believe God exists and he's doing something unique supernaturally? Religious music is
it'd be very easy. So, for example, just as, for instance, I can have an infection in my finger that makes it red, or I can have stubbed it on something which causes swelling, which makes it red, or I can have accidentally rubbed some blood off somewhere that makes it red, or I can rub some paint that makes it red. There are a million different ways in which a thing can manifest in an aesthetically similar way, but have a radically different cause underlying it.
Okay, you're using a lot of $5 words that I don't even think you know what you mean. You use aesthetic a bit too often, I think. My advice to you, Sunday, man to man, is stop using the word aesthetic so much because it really doesn't translate. Okay, there's visual.
You don't understand what the word
like,
aesthetic means?
Aesthetic has to do with like arts.
No,
like the aesthetic
no,
appearance.
But why are no? Because it doesn't.
You know what?
Listen, it doesn't because there's a difference between the aesthetic arts and other arts, right?
This guy needs to light up a joint here, okay? And we'll all just calm down, okay? Did I not respond to your critique, Wick, or your translated critique? It comes from the same source, of course. Everyone is religious.
That's your claim, which I want you to back up to be perfectly clear.
Okay,
you have claimed it's from the same source.
Can I ask a question? So a super chat, that's a really brilliant, maybe not brilliant, but good question. I'm maybe curious if this clarifies things for you.
Too much credit. Okay.
It's a brilliant one if you add a zero to whatever they super chat.
It's Brooks. I don't want to overinflate his ego. But Brooks says, why are we saying this behavior is religious? Why not say religious people are behaving like music fans?
Great question, Brooks. It is brilliant. I will give you credit, whereas your own master did not. Okay. The reason it's important to contextualize these things as religious and say, well, why should we describe otherwise secular behavior as religious? Why not just call it fanaticism or something like that? It's because this behavior is inextricably linked to the classic religious texts. So let me explain.
But what makes the text religious? The texts don't have a psychological experience, do they?
The texts are descriptions of the fundamental religious axioms and descriptions of our most fundamental behavior. So, for example, okay, this is the monomyth. This is the hero archetype that I think many people are familiar with, Joseph Campbell-wise, where every society, from the smallest tribe to the largest civilization, is based on religious stories. At the core of their culture is a religious mythology.
But what makes
in the classical term,
religious?
In the classical term.
But the classical term. But I know what the classical term means.
Okay.
Do you?
I am normally a very.
May I try, if I may?
Go ahead.
P.F. Young. Would it be just as accurate, right? If we simply used a different word other than religion. If the word religion itself is the sticking point here, why not simply say that religious people are having a musical experience, or there's a different word for it, like a mythological experience. I don't know which words you want to use, but it seems to me that a lot of people are getting stuck up on the word religion. So in the ease of communication and for the purpose of simply better getting your point across, why insist on the word religion? Why?
This was the point I was right in the middle of making. So most people, when they hear most people, when they think of religion, they think of what? Like Christianity, the Quran, Hinduism, right? That's what most people associate with the term religion.
There's an interesting history as to why.
Probably more interesting than you think.
It's substantially more interesting than you'd think.
Right.
Really good
And
book
like
on
I
it, by
said,
the way.
Come on,
Here.
you little vague
You should
posters.
light up a joint.
Very,
right? And
very,
it would be
very,
very interesting.
very good book and blissfully short. Before Religion
Look,
by Brett Longbury. You should read it.
How long have we been talking? We've been talking for 46 minutes. I would like to say that in 46 minutes, I've
that
learned a
all?
valuable lesson. I've learned a valuable lesson. And I will articulate it at the end because I'm still in the middle of learning it. The reason I think it's important to describe these as religious is because.
By the way, Brooks
it
is very pleased you
important-
understood his point, Wick. Sorry, as you were.
It is important to draw the connection between fundamental behavior and the classic religious texts that people think of, like the Bible or Quran or the Bhagavad Gita. There's an important connection there, and that's why I brought up the claim, hey, you can't. I don't understand how someone can have a rational moral framework that does not make appeals to claims that are fundamentally made in a religious context. Like the claim, we hold this is how the preamble, not of the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, but it's the same ethic being described. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men, endowed by their Creator, with inalienable rights. That's the axiom they start at, and then they
Yeah.
build the second.
But I mean, what
morality on top of
you're
that.
describing though
That
are simply.
axiom is religious.
But what you're
That's my
describing,
point.
yeah. But when you say religious, you just mean axiomatic. So when you say what is religious, you mean axiomatic. You say, well, what does it mean for it to be axiomatic? Well, it means to be religious, et cetera, et cetera. Round and
Well,
round we go.
sure. So
So
certain
why not?
terms
Why
are
not? Why not?
tautological inherently?
But why not just
have to
excise?
be.
Why not just excise the word religion entirely and say that at the beginning of
To
every
appease
single.
nerds such as yourself, fuck that. Because
What?
most people are religious. Most
but-
people have faith in their traditions.
but all-
most people
wait,
pray
wait.
to God.
But now you're not talking about axioms anymore. So what's religious is now left once again ambiguous. Because before you said it's religious because it's something to do with axioms, but now all of a sudden
Okay.
you're suggesting that it requires
Let me try.
intentional
Let me try
faith
again.
in a proposition. These are contrary statements. You need
Shoot
to
from the
pick
hip,
one.
Wick.
Let me try again. Sunday.
Yeah.
Sunday.
Do you think that there is any value, that there is any utility in pointing out that some people will treat, view, behave, and act towards whatever ideology they hold, whether it be Marx's Little Red Book or not Marx's Little Red
You
Book.
mean Mao's?
Yeah, Mao's.
Okay.
M words, M names, right?
I'll
And
suck.
with the same
What's your favorite
fervor,
Marx book, Young?
behavior, Das Kapital, obviously, and then with the same fervor and behavior as a Muslim or Islamic person will view the Quran. Do you think that there's no utility in drawing those connections?
I'm sorry, I interrupted what you were saying, so
Sure.
I didn't really catch it fully.
Do you not think that there's a utility in drawing the connections, that there's very similar behaviors from certain people who hold the Quran in esteem and certain people who
Oh yeah,
hold,
sure, but
Little Miles
yeah, sure, but that shouldn't be the end of the analysis. If you see a commonality between the behaviors of two distinct groups, what you want to start doing then is start breaking down like what are the particular constituent parts of the thing that gives rise to that behavior, and then afterwards, if you find something in common, you say there's something in common. But there's a basic principle in sociological analysis that is correlation does not equal causation. The bare fact that two entities behave in a similar way is not by itself a justification for claiming with certainty that they have the same cause.
Okay.
What was the book you were pointing to, Young? I'm just curious.
Das Kapital.
Oh, Das Kapital?
It's my favorite book on that shelf.
What does CVNS stand for?
I really
Are
like
you
it.
lying to us right
What
now?
is,
I
uh,
really.
Listen, I've got to.
Karl Marx.
What does CVNS
Karl Marx-
stand for?
Karl Marx
I've always
had a
wanted
lot
to do
of good
this.
ideas.
No, I've always wanted to do this. What does CVNS stand for?
What does CVNS stand for?
What do CV and S stand for? Letters. CV and S in capital.
in the book.
It's okay.
I was gonna make an inappropriate joke, but I don't know what.
I haven't
CVS
read it either.
stores
It's
were
okay.
open 24/7.
Sorry.
and-
Continue.
Oh, I haven't read it. It's just on my shelf,
That's
so
fair.
that when people come over, they go, "Oh,
That's fair.
Lo
I've
and
read.
behold, I found
I haven't not read it. I haven't read.
look how midwintery I am."
I haven't not read
All right,
it.
look,
I haven't
here's
not
what,
read
here's,
that mean?
here's look. Let's step out. Let's just put everything.
Look,
in
look,
context.
Wick. Here, you need
Sunday
to understand. Like the
I-
introduction to this thing alone is like 40, 80 pages
Das
long.
Capital is dry. It's boring.
It's actually not. It actually gets super intense, but you have to approach it the right way. Sorry, as you were.
no. It's
Obviously-
it's super interesting.
Look at us. Look at us. Look. Let me just say
okay.
something.
But this is beside the point. This is beside the point. Let me get it back. Let me try to get it back. Let me try to get it back. Because I don't think that you guys part ways as much as perhaps you might think.
That's
And
what I
think
was gonna say.
that
We're all
the
buddy
frustrating-
here.
Well, I don't know about that. But I think the frustrating part about this is you're trying to say very similar things. Not the same thing, but very similar things. But it's running into a couple problems. And that problem being the baggage
Stubbornness.
that is seen. Well, that too. But there is a lot of baggage loaded.
Well, I
in
think
the
the
term
principal
religion.
baggage is that we're supposed to be arguing about Jordan Peterson's maps of meaning, but I have yet to hear a quote from Jordan Peterson actually saying what his take on religion is. I've been debating with Young about religion.
Okay, I specifically picked the quote that was most like controversial that most people have heard of.
But I need a quote. I don't need a quote that's controversial. I need a quote that tells me in clear terms what does Jordan Peterson mean when he says religion/religious.
Are you
That's what
familiar
I
with
need.
Death of the Author? Does it matter what he meant if Young took a meaning from it? Can we not just deal with Young's meaning?
Well. It
Why do we
matters.
have to
It
look
only.
at Jordan Peterson's meaning?
You're correct. We can philosophically argue about that. But
Yes.
however, the title of the debate concerns maps of meaning, not P.F. Young.
I put my titles as clickbait all the time. You should know this. You've been on my show long enough to know
But
this.
the
I am
reason
more
why
curious-
P.F. Young wanted to talk about maps of meaning. That's the only reason why we're here.
No, P.F. Young wanted to talk about maps of meaning because he wanted to talk about his views on religion and it being part of everyone.
He wanted to talk about someone else's book that he disagrees with to talk about
wanted
his
to
views.
use
but
that as
maps
a-
of meaning inform my philosophical perspective that I try to present to you now that you
Yes,
so
that's
superficially
exactly why he
dismiss.
brought you here. I don't know how you did not know that, but apparently you did not. So here we are.
Let me just say, the actual reason that I brought Sunday here is because I believe Sunday is honestly one of my favorite characters in this space that I have had the pleasure of interacting with, and I correctly guessed that had we got brought together in a oh my god, hold on, my according to my chat, my microphone is not working. And
Well,
so this
according to
epic,
someone in my chat,
rant.
LMAO at President Sunday pronouncing Claude Lévi-Straux's name as Lévi-Strauss. You moron, not all ending syllables are silent in French. That one is, though. It's not Lévi-Strauss. It's Lévi-Strauss.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It should be
Pretty
good.
sure that it is. That it
now
is. You can laugh at
to
me later
my
if it's not.
to my chat. I should be.
You sound
able
fine
to
to
hear
me.
myself, in fact.
Wick, are you hearing it fine? Sounds fine.
Yeah, it's coming through on my end.
What Sam fuck?
So
Sorry.
you're distracting us. Okay, you were saying President Sunday is your favorite because why?
You
Because
said it there. It's fine by me.
I agree. Let me fix my mic. Okay. Sunday, would you like to retort to my epic concession of friendship and love?
No. It's the one correct thing
How do
you
you
said
feel
all night.
about that?
I wish I was asleep, honestly.
Why do you not like Young? Why
Here we
are
go.
you frustrated with this conversation?
You should be good.
I'm not frustrated with the conversation. It's going exactly as I expected it would.
You told me earlier that you thought it was going to suck.
And it does. I'm not
Fair enough.
frustrated.
Why does
Oh!
it suck in your
Let's
opinion?
go back to the diagram. The progression is exactly as I predicted. Full bore ahead.
Hold on. Let's now that we've proven that this is that Sunday and I agree on the merits of maps of meaning because we're talking right now. Sunday, do you? I guess what is your issue?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't sound like you have much of an issue other than a kind of an inquisitive semantic dispute, which is valid. But it sounds like, simply aligning on the definitions that Peterson's put forward, you're basically cool with that, right?
Well, no, I haven't seen any, and the ones that I've given, I mean, so it's tricky because you can you can use words in a way that is not consistent with anybody else in your field and still apply them in a consistent way that develops a system out of it. This happens a couple of times. There's some respectable thinkers who do so. In point of fact, one of my issues with Peterson talking about the moral as if it's simply a given category in antiquity is that way of speaking about the moral is actually very recent. We don't tend to think of morals as guiding towards some absolute end until about the time of Kant. So one of my issues with him is that it's not that his system, such as it is, or rather, it's not that you can't reconstruct it into something coherent. It's that the system, such as it is fundamentally pretending to be a work of anthropology and to describe real instances of communities in history, but it does so on the basis of the crudest interpretations of them based essentially on vibes. It's not good.
Based on vibes. Why do you think Jordan Peterson has a lot of academic success if he's just doing it all based on vibes?
A lot of academic success? In
Yeah,
what respect?
Professor at Harvard. He's in the top 1% of published
I couldn't begin.
psychologists.
Well, what do you mean by in the top percent of published psychologists?
By the what is it called? The N score or the
certainly not by the number
H
of
index. H index.
Certainly not by the number of citations of his work. He's practically unengaged with by serious anthropologists and psychologists, except as a curiosity.
Well, serious anthropologist and psychologist, by your definition, is not a reliable descriptor, we could say. He's in the top 1% in terms of H-index published papers. So it sounds like if he's as foolishly pedantic as you make him out to be, then how do you explain his overwhelming success in the field of academia?
Citations of maps of meaning.
Why is it that when he
what are you
engages
referring
with...
to? Let's see. So if I go to PsychNet, cited by 106 in 20 years.
My buddy Goodicris is playing Baldur's Gate 3, by the way. I just got the notification on Steam.
Sweet. One of them is a citation by Jordan Peterson.
What do you think of his work in personality psychology? Let's kind of
I don't.
move back from the religious.
I don't. One of the reasons why I'm not interested in his work in personality psychology is precisely because how he construes the category of personality in the first place is incredibly vague and under motivated. So, for example, in that chart
by all
we were
means,
looking
continue.
at, well, in that chart we were looking at earlier, when it's talking about like personality as manifested at the highest level of resolution, what has he done to actually justify this representation of the underlying structure of personality?
Hold on.
Or what has he done to identify personality anyways by this point?
We don't have the charts at hand. I'm talking about the psychometrics. He talked about the big five. His work for the big five. Yeah, the psychometrics. Of course, the psychometrics. Don't give me that look. You know the psychometrics. Don't you, Mr.
For
President?
my audience, why don't you simply tell us what the psychometrics are?
Psychometrics has to do with quantifying psychological properties through things like surveys and whatnot. I have no idea what he's talking about here.
Jordan Peterson's area of expertise, to the degree that he has one, because many people, would say, "Oh, he's not a philosopher, he's not a social scientist." Okay, fair enough. He is a, well, I don't want to stir up drama about the label psychometrician, because I know in the past Sunday's had some issues with
Okay, let's
the term
stick
psychometrician.
to what you mean by the young
Jordan Peterson's
Jordan Peterson, yeah.
grounding is in personality psychology, specifically in the field of psychometrics, specifically under the in regard to the Big Five model of personality, which is the gold standard of personality modeling in the field of personality psychology. The Big Five.
What do you mean? Gold standard with respect to
extroversion.
What? No, but gold standard with respect to what?
Agreeableness and neuroticism.
No, but the gold standard of what? What do you mean?
The most commonly used, widely used model of personality. The Big Five.
Okay.
Do you dispute this, Mr. President?
I'll take your word for it.
You should. You should take my word on everything. I'm a highly reliable source. And so Jordan Peterson's expertise is in this field, and he is very well cited for his contributions of not just of expanding the Big Five into the Big Ten, which is a
I'm looking at his citations here, and most of these, or a good portion of them, of only 100, once again, 20 years
Sunday,
of maps of meaning,
you are probably
by Jordan Peterson.
99% high in openness.
No, you're high. I was only drinking.
You're one's high, one's drunk, one's frustrated, because I think that we could have an interesting conversation.
A lot of these citations are by Peterson. A lot of these citations are by Peterson himself. He's
Let me ask you a
not.
question,
He's not
Sunday.
well cited.
This is something I'm thinking of right now. Do you think that arguing about philosophy on the internet is productive in any generally?
Sorry, say again. I'm reading something.
Do you think that arguing about philosophy on the internet is a productive endeavor? Because I'm having doubts right now myself.
Sorry, let's see. So Jordan Peterson under
We'll
best
wait on him to
psychology
finish this.
scientist. I don't know what this is exactly. So
Trying
it's
to engage here.
Probably nothing.
Quick.
I know. I'm trying to learn something about that claim you made about the
Let
best
me-
cited psychologist.
Okay.
I'd like to
while
get an
he
answer
does
on
that-
this, though. 'cause
While
this
he
is
does
relevant.
that, while he thinks of the answer to your question, right? I guess I would ask, Young, what did you hope to accomplish tonight? What in
What did I
ideal
hope to
young world?
accomplish?
In ideal young world, what would have this conversation look like in to succeed whatever objective you have here? Like what would
I
the
would have
conversation
liked
look like?
President Sunday to have come out and said
That seems to be
Jordan
that seems to be a false statement. He's not one of the most cited psychologists alive. Sorry, what were you saying?
Well, to be clear,
It's in the top
Young,
1%
hold on,
HMS.
Young did not claim he was. Young made no claim about the level of his citations. He made the claim that he was in the top 1%.
But the top 1% of
H
what?
Index, which he
Fact check.
hasn't defined what the H
5
index is.
Pinocchios. Wick just gave Sunday 5 Pinocchios.
The
What
H,
is-
the,
but
okay,
no,
okay,
no,
but
I'm
hang on.
asking you a
No, but
question,
Wick,
Young.
the
What
H
is the
index.
H
Notes his
index?
ass.
The H index is
Huh?
the number of publications for which an author has been cited by other authors. Citations.
Is that true?
I don't know. Ask ChatGPT. That's where I get most of my information from.
So do you put okay? So you put this into ChatGPT, and this is what it spilled out for you.
No, it is the case that Jordan Peterson is in, I believe, the top 1% of published academics by H-index. Yes, for his field.
For his
Like
field.
social science. Well, for example, most. How about this? Let's argue about this. This
What
is
do you
more
mean
fun.
by field?
The
Like
maj-
which field? Certainly not psychology.
Like anthropology and the humanities and social science, almost all of those papers are absolute garbage. Most papers are
What's your
not
favorite
cited
one?
once. The ones that are the 80% that are not cited one time.
What's your favorite one?
Could you imagine being in a field in which 80% of the published papers are not cited one time? Wouldn't that be embarrassing? Like a physics paper. You know, to like produce a physics paper is a tough ordeal because you know it's true or not. Either the physics law that you claim exists in application can be proven or not. A social science paper. What? Hey, Sunday, I got a question for you. For
Sure.
you. What do you think of the grievance studies hoax? Are you familiar?
Loosely.
What do you think of that?
I don't think much of it. Are we talking? We're not talking about this.
Do you
We're talking about the
think
recent
that
James
it
Lindsay one,
rev-
right? Well, one
where
of
James
the
Lindsay submitted a
well, one of
sham
the-
paper.
Yeah,
Well, hold on, let me
hang
establish
on.
the context for Wick's audience.
Am I
Wick,
allowed
let me
to-
engage your audience here.
Am I allowed
Well,
to
hold on.
reply?
Well, hold on. Let me set the context to enrich in your reply. I'm helping you
Okay.
by providing context here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Famed renegade academic James Lindsay and Peter Boghossian and Helen Pluckrose, 3 academics, they produced a series of papers and submitted them to publication to queer feminist journals or something like that, like social science journals. And one of them, I believe, was they took Hitler's speech about.
They made shit up and tried to get it published under legit journals, basically.
And it did get published,
And it did, yes.
thus indicating the absolute sham level of journalistic integrity in these journals. Now, that's field of social science.
Well, it's not the field of social
Why should I
science. This is
care?
actually a hodgepodge of journals. I very much doubt you can name one off the top of your head, but leaving that aside, we actually did on my channel go through the papers that were submitted because we were interested in exactly what Boghossian was doing. Yeah, you can find it on my live stream list, I believe. I'll have to post it again.
Why'd you say vaguely familiar then?
Because it's been a hot minute. But one of the things we noted when we went through is that unfortunately, a lot of the a lot of the grievance studies hoax really relies upon, we submitted this in bad faith and it got published. The essays themselves that were accepted were for the most part not actually philosophically incoherent. And unfortunately, the nature of academic publishing is not that they only publish things the authors agree with. Sometimes an absurd paper that is well argued or sufficiently argued or whatever can get through. And sometimes just because a paper publishes philosophical themed papers does not mean it is a reputable or representative philosophical source either.
This is why
the grievance studies host established literally nothing.
Quite the contrary, Mr. President.
No, it established
You
literally
betrayed-
nothing.
You betrayed.
What's your
what it
favorite?
established
What's your
with your own
favorite? What's your
words.
favorite
Excuse
paper?
me, may
from
I
the-
reply? May I reply, Mr. President?
But this is a time critical question, and I would
No,
like.
it's not.
I have spoken. I've spoken.
We'll come back here
I've
again.
spoken the
Well,
least.
Stop. Ask your question, Sunday. I'm
Thank
curious
you.
what your question is.
I've spoken the least of.
his point he just made.
I've spoken the least of the two of us tonight. I would like you to indulge me.
Oh.
Well, I don't know. Your opening was
Start
like
a fucking source on that
almost-
one.
Cover
Mr.
your eyes.
President.
Cover
Holy
your eyes.
shit.
Cover your eyes.
Okay.
Washington Post 5 Pinocchios. Right
Close
now.
your eyes. Let's go with this. Close your eyes.
Cover them with a hand.
Yeah. Close your eyes. Cover it with a hand. Go ahead.
Okay.
Name one of the grievance studies papers.
Irrelevant.
Yeah,
Not
I thought so.
important. I could just Google it, and it would seem like I'm smarter than I really am, which is very difficult to do.
Now, if you were smart, you would have Googled it while I was telling you to cover your hand. Cover your eyes.
True. You acknowledged with your statement right there, right fucking there, that a paper can be absurd and yet still accepted in a social scientist journal.
In its conclusions, absolutely.
Let's-
For
let
example,
me-
Maps of Meaning was published by Routledge.
Ooh, not a good example because Maps of Meaning is incredibly base. Okay, but these absurd papers that were accepted, if by your own standard a field will accept a paper that is absurd, then I call into question the validity of that field. I dare you to find me a physics paper which you would regard as absurd. You couldn't, because it wouldn't be accepted if it was absurd.
No, it's
Because
'cause I'm
in order
not a
for it to be
physicist. I don't
accepted,
read that shit.
It must prove
But I
its reality.
am curious though. In addition, if indeed you're going to say that these journals are representative of all the social sciences, can you name one of those?
Hufflepuff magazine. Listen, it doesn't matter what it's called, all right? It's all wizard speak to me, all right? It's
what I
irrelevant, okay? Let me ask you this. This is the original question I want to ask you.
Well,
And I
I
think
have
this
an
is-
example of this actually that I just read about, and
yeah?
it was from Nature magazine, the Nature journal, I should say.
Nice.
Recently, a climate scientist published in Free Press, and his name escapes me for the moment, but I'm sure I can Google this up. Basically, he admits that in the process of putting together,
Oh,
his
I know
study
what you're
of-
talking about. That's not fair to him, though. To be fair, this is also in STEM, so it doesn't really bear on me. But that's not necessarily fair. So what that author was pointing out was that as a
context that Wick was trying to establish here.
Well, I think you know what I'm talking about, though, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
oh, we'll
Okay,
continue
well, let me
explaining.
explain.
Yeah.
Let me explain. Sure. So basically, he makes the argument that in order to have the best chance of his article, his science being published in the big, Nature is the premier, right, of scientific journals, that he was sure to frame the data in a
I don't
way.
know about that, but it is big. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would go so far to say it is
An
the
unimportant
premier.
detail, but go ahead.
Its only competitor is, I think, Science. But anyway,
Apparently, there was a fraudulent paper in 2013 as well, so that's interesting. But that's tricky to establish quickly. Sorry, as you were. My apologies.
different thing. But basically, he's saying
As you were,
he
peon.
framed the data in a way that he knew the editorial will like. It wasn't fraudulent data. It was accurate, right? But it's knowing what the editors wanted
Yeah.
for him to publish a paper shaped how he conducted the study. And and his claim is that this happens.
Well,
all
I
the
don't think it's how he conducted the study. I think it's how he published the findings. I think that's crucial. I think how he compartmentalized it, and I think I could be wrong on this because I haven't looked at it in I think it's been about a week. But I think
Well, it only happened I think this came out 2 weeks ago. So.
About a week
it was a little bit ago. So I actually really appreciate him pointing this out. That dumb physics lady on YouTube was down as for lying. But I think the thing that he was pointing out is that one of the problems with how academic publishing works is that certainly when you're talking about science articles for popular consumption, is that they want to sell magazines, and one of the ways you sell magazines is you have explosive, scary, bombastic, whatever. Elon Musk has figured out how to create telepathy with microchips, and then you actually read the article and you go through, and it actually what it is Elon Musk has managed to make nerves interact with a magnet or something. I don't know what Elon Musk does, but you get the idea. I think the point he was making, which was good, this isn't like a so-called test. What he was pointing out is that there are issues with academic publishing, specifically under capitalism as it happens, that result in people in some sense being less than upfront about their motivations about presenting information in a particular kind of way. And I think that's good that he did that. I think there is a moral failing on some level that we allow ourselves to play into that anyways, but it's also a condition of doing science for a lot of people too. So there's sort of That's different though from the so-called hoax, or from the, I keep saying so-called. That's different from the grievance studies hoax. It was meant to ape the so-called hoax. It did so badly, even though the so-called hoax kind of sucked anyways. But the issue with the grievance studies hoax is that its goal was not to actually pinpoint actual structural issues in a carefully defined field of study and research and publishing. Instead, what it is, it just fired willy-nilly papers that they deemed to be silly in their aims, even if they passed muster in terms of their content. And they didn't really sharply delineate between a good journal and a bad journal, a reputable journal and a disreputable journal. They just went for whoever would publish, and they took what they got at random, and they're like, see, look, academia is bunk, and that's silly. For a start, because even if you could prove, for example, that every single reputable journal was garbage, that would not in itself indicate that no academic work being done in the universities, for example, is any good, or even the majority of it isn't any good. These are two separate things. It's just a garbage stunt at the end of the day. Sorry.
I want to move away from this specific.
I would like to ask something.
Oh, go ahead, ask your thing. But I want to make. We keep going into the the nitty gritty rabbit hole,
right?
And I think I want to keep this more high level. But go ahead.
Yeah, let's take it to the top. Sunday.
Yes.
Do you think it is productive to argue, as we are arguing, about philosophy on the internet? What do you hope to achieve in your engagements, like the one we're having now? Not this one in particular, but in general.
Oh, in general? Oh, this one, views and clicks. In general, I don't know. Depends. Depends on the conversation.
Like, what is the goal with your channel? What are you trying to accomplish? For reference, my goal. It's an outlet.
I like to study political theory, and the channel allows me to do that as a living.
Do you hope to achieve a certain outcome? Are you trying to get involved in politics at all? Are you trying to act out any of the stuff?
No, clearly not. I'm on YouTube.
Well, YouTube is one of the most powerful platforms for spreading your message and engaging in political action.
It's one of the most powerful platforms for spreading your message if you already have an audience at a large scale. But in terms of getting it out there, if you don't, the market's saturated. It's incredibly difficult, and especially if you're doing any material that has any sort of like barrier to entry, like political theory, where it gets really dense very fast. I'm not going to have that kind of popular audience. Not that delusional.
Well, not with that attitude.
No, not.
But
period.
what do you
fundamentally can't.
Okay, but
that's why nobody who is successful does the stuff that I do. Like the stuff that I do is just not popularly oriented. Like we did.
Okay, that's fine.
We were reading like a Bataille paper a couple
nights
ago.
I'm curious. I'm curious because, like, for example, like Wick, you properly asked, what did I hope to get out of this conversation? I'm not really sure. Obviously, look, Sunday and I are. You know that scene from Pirates of the Caribbean where Jack Sparrow and Barbarossa are dueling, and then Barbarossa leans back as a zombie and he says, "Well, Jack, two immortals stuck in an eternal combat. What should we do about it?" And Jack Sparrow says,
"Which be two immortals locked in epic battle till Judgment Day and Trump is sound."
Yeah. That's what I. Yeah. And and it's we're just two epic characters, and this is an epic conversation of fun and joy. But I do think in the middle, like, yeah, what am I? Like, what? Because I think to myself, maybe it's only important to argue about philosophy as a last minute resort. Like, why even care about philosophy to begin with? Like, you should start by. It seems like philosophy is only important once you've found your initial disagreements that are far more practical. You know, in terms of like, well, the merits of maps and meanings. Like,
well, look at Hegel over here.
Is that what Hegel would say? I don't know much about Hegel. Look, I'm going to admit this, and this will surprise people. I haven't read that much philosophy. And I actually don't know much in general. But yeah, I guess, because I am interested in, like, I'm very concerned fundamentally about polarization. Right? Like, for example, Sunday, you and I, on paper, are arch enemies. Right? You're some sort of, Marxist, anti-capitalist...
No, you're like, to go back to Pirates of the Caribbean, you're like those the twins. The one has like the fake eye. That's who you are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which one? The tall one or the short one? The taller one?
Probably the taller one, yeah.
How tall are you?
6.
Me too.
Okay.
And I have
You're
them
not
on
my
the side.
type. Don't get any ideas.
Well, hey, like I said, I'll show you my bookshelf after this. Okay. But
We're
like,
on the
like,
right track, but don't get your hopes up.
I'll take it. I'm concerned about polarization, and it would seem on paper that Sunday and I are enemies of disrepute. But look at us. We're having fun here. We're having a gay old time in the classic sense, not the I'll show you my bookshelf later sense. And I like that's in some convoluted, goofy soapbox kind of way. You know, that's what I'm trying to build bridges, okay? And if it takes ignorance and foolishness and playing around, then, you know, I apologize for wasting everyone's time here if they wanted a sophisticated
Not a waste of my
intellectual
time.
argument.
I made some
That's
money.
what I like to think, you know? And I like to think that whoever's watching is kind of like, you know, this fucking guy, he sucks, but he sucks in the right direction. That came out wrong. You get what I mean, Sunday?
No, but that's okay.
But that's okay. I guess that's the lesson we learned. Wick, I think I've utterly destroyed my opponent.
Is this where you wanna?
Where would you like to take this conversation now?
Is this where you want to call it? I mean, I'm down for whatever you're down for. I will say this. I think there is a lot to be talked about under the topic of religious behaviors when it comes to ideologies, politics, how we're treating each other, etc. Because
Ooh, how about capitalism? Should we just have a generic argument about capitalism?
I'm not here to argue just to argue. Is the thing, right? Like that's
On a debate
not
channel?
for me.
Okay.
I'm willing to do it in a separate venue, but tonight I thought we were going to argue about Jordan Peterson's and your interpretation of his work versus our friend Sunday's interpretation of this work. I think we have reached the point where it's clear that there is an impasse in how we are doing things.
At least one of us is an idiot. That's for sure.
It doesn't have to be so. I mean, it could be so. It could be that both of us or all three of us are idiots. That's always a possibility.
At least one of us.
But it's also possible that none of us are idiots and we are simply coming at this from different angles and trying to communicate in a way that just isn't getting through. That's obviously a possibility as well.
I think we're all idiots.
Fair enough.
I agree.
Fair enough.
I agree.
But I don't know if there's productivity to be had or interest to be had in carrying this off in this direction too much longer. What do you guys think?
Where you got to be with?
I agree.
Should we call it?
Go for it.
Listen.
Call it?
Wait, listen.
Because I'm still going to talk, and I'm going to have people on and talk about this and stuff.
Yeah, you want to bring people on? I'll stick around for 20, 30, 40 minutes, something like that. Maybe.
I can do.
Shows
I
up
can
and
do.
who argues.
I can
Let's
do
do
20,
it. Let's
30
open up to the
minutes.
fans.
Okay.
20, 30 minutes.
Right,
I gotta
'cause
go.
look,
to
at
the
the end
bathroom,
of
though.
the day, at the end of the day, this show, despite what Wick will tell you, despite what Mr. President Sunday will tell you, despite what I will tell you, this show is about you, the audience. Okay, we are here to blindly feed your basest impulses. Okay, of intellectual hubris, of drug-induced nuttiness.
Yeah, now this'll make it
so
something. Piggy Butt, come on, jump backstage, Piggy Butt, and we'll hear what you have to say. Piggy Butt will obviously add to this conversation.
Can piggyback on that thought for a sec? I need
hold
to.
on. I also have a rule: no VTubers. I'm not going to be on stream
Not
with
a
a VTuber
VTuber.
anymore. Okay, I learned
Why?
that lesson the hard way.
Why?
I don't trust VTubers. If someone's going to argue with me, I want to look them in the face, at least digitally.
Okay, Piggy Butt, you have to have your camera on. Is that okay?
I gotta pee.
Go pee.
Mr. President,
It's going to take a minute for people to get here.
hold your bladder.
Piggy Butt, you got a camera for us? Give him a second. Let him figure out he's muted on his end.
You know, did I tell you the lesson I learned from the last debate that I had?
I'm back.
Wick?
I made it.
What was the lesson?
The lesson is, a lesson I would apply here is if someone comes on to a live stream and their name is Piggy Butt, the only fool is the person who argues with that person and takes anything they have to say seriously. So Piggy Butt, I hope you throw something out and we can juggle it around in good fun. But I cannot entertain an honest argument with someone named Piggy Butt.
It's fine. I get that a lot. You're not the first person to say that, so it's understandable.
Yeah.
Let me see. Well, I too will be honest, and I don't know anything about Jordan Peterson's views on
Well,
morality. I think
what's your view?
probably-
What's your view on religious? Is everyone religious, Piggy Butt?
Yeah.
Or are you religious?
Yeah, I think we all have these. I think Carl Jung talked about like these archetypes that kind of shape who we are, and it's due to like these.
Yes.
Continue.
Piggy's been compromised.
I think we are
Piggy's been turned to
predisposed
bacon.
this.
Uh-oh. Who the... Wait. That motherfucker that you just brought on screen.
Rowan?
Where's your goddamn camera, Rowan? Look me in the face before you challenge me.
Okay, hold on. Let me turn my camera on. It's because my internet is shitty right here, and it's
I understand.
fucking
Turn
weird.
your cameras
so hold
on, though, if you got them. Please.
Okay, all right.
Rowan is a Sunday a goon.
I don't know who he is.
What'd I miss?
One of your allies have showed up to stab me in the back.
I'm here to represent Twilight. Okay, that's all I'm here to do. So, put
Okay,
some
you're here. What do
respect
you
on
got?
it, Paul.
While Piggy Butt fixes his internet.
While Piggy waits. I was down to talk about that same point about the use of the word religious to talk about anything that is axiomatic in nature. I watched part of that on the stream, but I had to walk away for something. What was the conclusion of that, Paul? What did you think? Do you want to use that word for anything that is axiomatic in nature, even if you're an atheist? Or
Kind of, yeah, let's go. Yes, totally. Because it's, yeah.
Okay, why?
Because it offers more utility.
It offers utility.
More utility.
More utility.
Yeah.
Well, so I like what Mr. President Sunday said earlier about how why wouldn't you just consider being religious a subset of the already existing kind of human behavior pattern of just believing in any kind of axiomatic value structure, because that came before we had religion in the sense of like theism or deism, right? So why isn't one a subset of the other?
Because, as I stated, because these relate to the classically religious stories. We could just I mean, like, look, anytime you have an argument about what language is better, you could just say, well, let's just get rid of the term and use a different term. It's like, sure. Like, we could all be speaking Spanish, and the word religion would not exist at all, and then we'd just be having a different semantic discussion. So, like, most people, when they hear the term religion, they associate it with the Bible and religious ideas about morality
Theism,
and
yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah. And it is, and the things I'm talking about are in that realm of fundamental moral claims that are not based on rationality. They're based on faith. The idea that all humans are created equal or have something divine inherently valuable about them is a religious idea. It's not a rational idea. So if it's not a rational idea, it's a religious idea. Those are the two options you have. It's a faith-based idea or a rational idea.
If I may, interrupting on something tangential. Sunday, I'm curious. Are you familiar with Short Fat Otaku, Dev, at all?
Yeah, he's like a Canadian penguin.
He wants me to arrange debates with him versus dumb retards who have blocked him on Twitter over nonsense.
Did I block him?
You blocked him on Twitter?
I don't think I blocked
Pulling
him.
out the Destiny words, I see.
I didn't block him on Twitter.
Okay, but
block him on Twitter so I can arrange a debate between you two. Cool.
Sure. What
All
about?
right, Roan, what do you think of the point that I just made, Roan? Can I either
Yeah.
have rational faith claims, rational axioms?
He's now blocked on
Faith
Twitter.
axioms.
My pleasure.
Well, so I think that, and I can be wrong on this, I'm not as formally trained in philosophy as some, but aren't
Probably
all axioms, they are based on, like, ultimately that which we cannot prove, right? So it's like,
True.
so any, I mean, even to have faith in your own sense data not lying to you is an axiom, right? To
That's not necessarily true.
choose to value human well-being is an axiom, right? But I don't think that you can divide it into rational axioms and faith-based ones, because all axioms are, I think the definition of everything being axiomatic is you hit the kind of epistemic bedrock of that there is no justification for it, right?
Can I jump in there? That's not.
Yeah, what's up?
That's not necessarily true. You can have axioms that you arrive at. All axiomatic means is that serves as the floor of some logical system. So, like,
Okay.
this system takes these as axiomatic, but that doesn't mean that these axioms can't be proven. That just means that within the system, insofar as you are operating within a system, you presume these things to be true. That's sort of condition of being part of the system itself. It doesn't necessarily mean like just being axiomatic refers to its position in a reasoning process. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's unprovable.
But there's some assumption that's being that is there. Like you can't ask a question if you can't like want to ask a question without there being some looking for. I'm not.
I think I get what you're saying. Can I try to restate it for you? I think what you're going to say, and I think it's valid, is that within a system you can't prove an axiom internally because the system presumes the axiom, so you'd be arguing in a circle, and that's true. But
well, no, that's not where I was getting at. But
All
that is another truth. Yeah, that is true. You can't prove like if there is contradictions in the universe, and
what are you trying to say though?
I fucking forgot. This guy that's a whole nother point that I was gonna make, but he was jumping ahead. That I was getting there. Yeah, I can't think about it right now. Sorry.
Let's move on. That's fine.
Why can't we just choose to value human life and human well-being without that being religious to you, Paul? Like, why the attachment to that term?
Because the mechanism by which you make that choice is unconscious.
I don't think so, because can't you consciously choose to not value certain human lives? Like, I feel like if we take everybody's favorite dictator, Hitler, he very much chose to not value the lives of Jewish people, right? So it's like, don't we?
Or did he arrive at that? Do you let's use a more obvious example. Does the mother choose to love her child?
No, I mean, I think that a lot of our, I mean, we are animated by forces that precede us. I would agree with you in like a lot of cases, but then also there's some things that we can choose, and we do kind of temper. I think you don't choose your temperament. Like there are values that are built into you, but beyond that, there is some wiggle room, I think, in terms of what we can kind of choose to value and how we want to go about those things, right?
Not fundamentally. You don't.
I just think that
can't.
Why are you opposed to reserving the word religious to mean what we conventionally know as like theism, or a value structure that worships like a literal deity, versus just any kind of like value system that we axiomatically choose to value certain things? Why?
The brutally practical reason, which I tried to articulate several times, is we need to understand that like most of the political disagreement we see nowadays is religious disagreement. It's not political rational disagreement. The disagreement between the MAGA Republicans and the uber woke left-wingers, let's say, is a religious dispute. It's not a political rational dispute. And so it's important to understand that's the nature of the disagreement. And once you understand that's the nature of the disagreement, you don't try to approach it from a Socratic, let's just talk about this rationally.
If I may, to back this point up just briefly, to steelman it a little bit, I was having a conversation today with a leftist who mentioned that MAGA Republicans, fascists, and many others of that ilk are not rational. They do not act rationally. There is this belief amongst certain leftists that the people who are in these kinds of extreme political or extreme ideological circles are not rational actors, or they haven't arrived at their conclusions from rational basis. So that does seem to at least highlight the point that perhaps there is some truth in the fact that this is not at its base or at its core a rational struggle. It is a struggle that is
religious struggle,
alien in nature. He wants to use the word religious. I don't know if I'm 100% with that, but yeah.
I would consider that a subset of an irrational belief structure, because rather than making like religion the term that is, it's either rational or it's religious, why not be like it's rational or it's irrational, and then a type of irrational belief system could be a religious belief system? Because I mean that I don't know the origins of the word religion specifically, but like to me, whenever I think of that, I picture theism. I picture a god, right? I don't picture any random arbitrary belief system that is behind a political candidate or some kind of cult.
Yeah, and that's why you're wildly ineffective.
Isn't it pragmatic?
Whereas I am incredibly effective because I understand the world as it is.
Of course.
Yeah,
Isn't
yeah,
it
I would
pragmatic though to differentiate those things, Paul? I mean, why would you? Because then if you use the term religious, then people don't know if you're talking about Christianity or Islam versus like people that like a football team versus Trump fans. But these things are pretty clearly distinct, right?
Again, the point of understanding the framework as political disagreement is religious disagreement is that then you can act in a way that is more commensurate with ameliorating religious disagreement, which is not by explaining, well, this policy is this or whatever. It goes to the very base. You have to speak to their fundamental axioms at a religious level. For example, the Make America Great Again people, I would say, are possessed by the spirit of the positive aspect of culture in a reductive archetypal sense. It's like, okay, the Make America Great Again people didn't arrive at their love for America based on an empirical analysis of the data. They arrived at that belief because it was ensconced in them.
Just
much
well,
like
why isn't that a mob
indoctrinations.
mentality? Like, why don't you just call that mob mentality?
Well, maybe it is.
Very, very quickly, just a quick point of information from earlier.
Very quickly, please. I have little time here, Sunday.
According to research.com, Jordan B. Peterson is ranked according to the DX at the D index at 3,440th. Just to be clear.
That's pretty damn good. Out of 6 billion people, that puts him in at least the top 10.
6 billion psychologists.
That puts him in at least top 10%.
6 billion psychologists.
What did you say? Wait, what did you just say? His D. What is a D ranking?
Oh, that's not safe for YouTube.
Oh, fair enough.
The D index. The D index. The D index is the
What do you think of me?
Young, very quickly. The D index is the H index. It's discipline specified.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rowan, what do you think of me absolutely destroying you just now?
Yeah, I think that I will rid you of your centrist mind virus one day, Mr. P.F. Chang. Okay, that's what I think.
Can I ask?
PF
Can
jerk.
I ask
I like
you,
PF
Rowan?
jerk.
P.F.
Rowan.
jerk.
Is it Rowan or Rowan?
Rowan, like
Rowan.
Hoenn, the Pokemon
Rowan,
region.
got you.
That's where I got it from.
Rowan.
Like Rowan
What
the
would
boat.
you think? First of all, I don't think I've ever met you, so hi.
Hi, hello. Nice to
second
meet
of
you.
all, what is? Because this is just if you'll indulge me, a personal issue. What do you define as a centrist? What is a centrist to you?
Oh, this should be good.
I mean, I think that if you can just pick the middle point between any two endpoints and then make that as wide or as narrow as you want. I think Paul has a very wide net definition of centrism that I reject because he considers people like Destiny and Jordan Peterson to both be a part of that, which are those are very opposing people in terms of almost every economic policy that exists. So I would consider my version of centrism a bit more narrow.
And yet you view Young as a centrist, correct?
He self-identifies as well. I don't know all of his policy beliefs.
Enlightened centrist. I don't know if
yes.
centrist.
Well,
Of
you
the
know
enlightened
enough to-
variety.
Thank
lest
you,
we
Shaggy.
forget.
A centrist.
Yeah, Rowan is a PFing orbiter, in fact.
Okay.
So,
Just
I am
you should
indeed.
know enough.
I want to respond real quick to that point earlier, though,
ahead.
Paul, because the one thing that it seems like you're kind of shoehorning in, you use people behaving in irrational mob mentalities to say that mirrors like a religious structure, which I would agree with. And then you kind of use that to say, well, these people are religious. But then you also say that at the same time, anybody that has any value structure that is axiomatic is religious. So it's not just the people that are behaving in like insane mob ways. You would also say that any person who is an atheist is religious, or Sam Harris is also religious, right? You usually all people are religious. Every human being that has values.
Yeah,
right?
if you are operating, unless you're like maybe you could make the case that a pure psychopath who treats all human beings as objects and is simply guided by pleasure. But even then, you could make the case that pleasure is their god, so to speak. I think it is a useful frame to understand, instead of say, well, who's religious and who's not? We say every individual is religious, and each of them serve different gods. Some of them, their god is the Christian god. Some of them, their god is their favorite sports team. Some of them, their god is alcohol. Some of them, their god is cocaine. Some of them, their god is insert any number of. Some people's god is League of Legends.
Why not
they
oxygen?
spend their whole life thinking about.
Why not oxygen? Why not extension
because-
in time and space? Why is our God not the
Because
fact that we're
oxygen-
three-dimensional?
Because
We're
why is
addicted to
oxygen not
oxygen.
one's god?
If we have too much of it, we'll die, but we need it anyways.
Same. I mean, food. You can make the case with food. Why is food? Well, some people's god food is their god. If you become like a food addict. Oxygen. I think that because there's no
Hey, Daedalus.
there's no difference between
hey,
people
Sunday.
who
Welcome to hell.
breathe or do not breathe. Welcome to hell. Exactly. Religious claim right there. Look at that.
It's got me there.
That makes sense, Ron. Are you finally done
yes,
being
I
so
think-
ignorant? Are you
I
on
think
the,
that
the train
our-
of truth?
Yes, I'm on the choo-choo train of truth. I think that our difference is semantic. I get what you're saying. I don't like your wording, but on a substantive level, all
don't
you're
like
saying
yours.
is that all you're saying is that people believe in axioms and people have values, and I would agree with that. And you call that religious, and I would reserve the word religious to mean the people that have those value structures that worship a deity. So
Fair enough.
but
And I would say,
I
Yeah,
get what you're saying, though.
I
well,
just
hold on.
Yeah,
Fair
yeah,
enough.
that's kind of what I'm here for.
Well, hold on. My response to that, simply, Jordan Peterson would not be as successful as he is unless other people resonated with the definitions of religion that he is using.
Hey, but you can resonate with something that's incorrect. I don't think that's
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
that's-
imagine.
yeah,
I imagine. I
yeah,
imagine
yeah,
people said the
well,
same
hold
thing
on,
about L. Ron Hubbard back in the day.
Whoa, we're talking about the
Or
utility
Hitler.
of language.
Just kidding.
The correctness of language is a function of its utility, and the fact that so many people resonate with. Jordan
Actually, there are
Peterson is
weird
indicative
resonances
of
between
utility.
Hubbard and Peterson.
Yeah,
but-
I just want to say in this guy's defense, because everyone's attacking him, I do agree. You know, I do agree. We do act in
King,
religious
shit.
manners, but
He
I
enlightened centrist. Welcome to the team.
I do feel there's like to a certain extent, like yeah, I do feel it's just a perspective and like a word thing. It's not really. I don't know. I feel like you're getting too into it. Like I think.
Right.
It can
is a
be
word
called.
thing.
It can be called just mob mentality. It doesn't have to be called specifically religion. Religion can refer to more than one thing, which can be a dogmatic mentality or a constant act. You know, if you're doing something over and over again religiously. I smoke weed religiously. Yeah, I do that. You know, if you just follow somebody blindly, that's what people do in religions. They blindly follow the Pope because they're in a certain position of authority, so they're blind. That is what makes religion. Spirituality is supposed to be the point of religions, but when people start listening to other people and losing sight of like their connection to the creator or whatever, then that's when you get a spiritual thing turn into a religious practice. So yeah, that's all I got.
I agree that the difference is semantic, but I worry that whenever you do that, you begin to, the term is not equivocate, but you run the risk of just saying that it is equal to be Christian or Muslim, or to believe in climate change, or to believe in evolution, or it's like any belief. Suddenly, you can just say, "Well, this person is religious." And then you are you're drawing an equivalency between essentially then any belief structure, but that's not true because the degrees of dogma vary greatly. And I would say that if you're a person who has values and axioms, but you're a very evidence-based person who could be swayed into other beliefs based on empiricism, versus a person who is dogmatically committed to believing in one interpretation of a god or something. Under your system, you would call both of those people religious, and I think that misses a lot of nuance in their epistemology.
I think we're missing something. Just give me a second. Give me a second.
Sure.
I think that I can't speak for Young here, but for me,
You
'cause I
can.
talk about this sometimes.
Because
Can
you're
I give
old.
250? You can speak for me.
Stop. That way of arriving at the conclusion is what makes it religious, right? So
Which
someone
way?
who's an empiricist and who looks at the evidence, considers, that is less religious. or not
Empiricism was
religious.
conceived by a
Whereas-
Christian.
Whereas it did. So, but
if
this
one-
idea
Go ahead,
of
Vic.
this idea of dogmatic acceptance, of zealous, like I am not even going to hear no.
Oh, I clicked something. What did I do? Shoot! What did I do? Oh, I turned off Discord. Damn it! Hang on, 1 sec. Why did Discord turn off? Let me in. God damn it. Gonna be hearing about this for months. Or I should update the theory meter.
That it's like
There we go.
anybody that has any value structure, any system of belief is religious, and I would say that a lot of them can be. I know there are a lot of people that arrive. There are a lot of people that arrive at political beliefs that do it in a very like religious, dogmatic way, but that's not necessarily always true. Because whenever I think of a person that approaches a thing like a religion, I think dogmatic. I think unfalsifiable hypothesis. I think presuppositionalism. You know, whenever I think of an empiricist who is very skeptical and open to evidence, that doesn't conjure up the idea of being religious to me. If they're like, I'm open to anything. Let's talk. Let's hear evidence.
Do you regard yourself as a skeptical empiricist, open to evidence?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So you dogmatically pursue truth, correct?
I am open. I try to arrive at the best version of truth that I can. Yes.
Right. It's dogmatically, because you will be open. You will open yourself up to any
That's kind of sneaky, Paul. I don't know if I would equate the pursuit of being open to truth with
Mr. Piggy, hold on. I want to
following dogma.
I want to rhetorically execute Roan once and for all.
I do want to give space to Daedalus, though, since he just
sure.
But
I think. You okay there?
I wanted Roan to respond.
Finish.
Do the kill shot, Paul. I'm ready.
You are dogmatically pursuing truth, and one of the ways you do that is by taking great pains to remain open-minded and allow yourself to be influenced by the evidence.
Sure, I would say that's
more so than
probably
most,
fair.
perhaps, because you've placed truth at the highest value.
Yes, but are you going to equate that to then any person that believes any belief dogmatically is the same as a person that dogmatically wants to pursue what is true?
Well, certainly, someone who wants to preserve their country is not interested in truth. That's not their highest value. They're dogmatically, Trump supporters. They want to make America great again. But you've decided that's not my highest value. I will spend all of my time and effort, or a significant proportion of it, dogmatically sifting through the evidence and opening and keeping
and
my
trying
mind
to
open.
find truth. Yes, but Paul, I don't think it's fair for you to draw an equivalency between a person who wants to pursue truth and then a person who doesn't care about truth and they'll believe anything for any reason. Because you're saying
have no
that both of those people have an
have to think it's
axiom.
fair. It is.
Okay.
That's what I'm.
I want to give a chance.
That's
to some of the other
ridiculous.
people here. I want to give a chance to Daedalus, and then I want to give a chance.
First, it wasn't
to
fair.
Paul.
Now it's ridiculous.
Go ahead, Daedalus.
Both things. You're very good
Daedalus.
at it.
Daedalus.
So here we go. The point, I think, to go back to something that Piggybutt said, is that religion ultimately is about fellowship and community. So I think there's a certain degree to which you have to join in with other people for something to be religious. Like, it has to be something you share in a certain sense. Yeah. Even if it's not a large group, there's something you share and have community inside. Like, that's a very, I think, contemporary conception of our idea of religion.
True.
Why are you saying true? What you were talking about was entirely individualistic.
What are you
were talking about
who even are you? What'd you do with Mr. Sunday?
He's right there.
Well, we have no evidence that this is the same person.
What
there
is
was
this?
a break in continuity. He could have been replaced by one of the lizard people. We don't know. Continue.
Yeah, religion. Sure, religion is also about morality, morality only exists amongst individual subjects. There's no morality if there's only one person. I'm gonna roll out about 5 to 10 minutes, Wick, if that's cool.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you, sir.
Daedalus, I wanna interrogate your position on there has to be a community for it to be religious. I don't necessarily agree with that. Though, if one wants to make certain fine distinctions between religion and spirituality, fair enough. It might be just a semantics thing. But I think that even if someone is the only believer in whatever it is that they seem to be religious about in an area, we could still reasonably identify that person to be a religious person, even if they have no community for which to fall back on. No?
But then the religion really isn't serving much of a function outside of that individual's
Perhaps not.
gratification.
Perhaps not, but it would be
Like,
foolish.
the point, spirituality, it would be something that.
Wait, no. At what point does ideology turn to a religion? If you're saying
Well,
that
like
just
I
somebody thinking something-
elucidated earlier, it's how you arrive at the conclusions that you have and how you behave around those conclusions. So if you are dogmatic, zealous, refuse to look at other sides, etc.
Okay, but hang on,
then you're
Wick. I'm gonna push
sort of
back on you.
religious.
I'm gonna push back on you. I've been pretty quiet. What on earth motivates attaching the term religion to that scalar order as well? Like, you need to justify that too. It's not enough just to introduce a scheme that happens to be
I
internally
think that
coherent. You have to
it serves
justify it.
utility. And let
What-
me tell you the utility it reserves. It's
Well, no,
something
hang on,
that,
slow down. Any coherent system can be imagined to serve the utility that's consistent with any kind of coherent system, because obviously we can build off of
Well,
one.
you're asking me why
But
I use the word religion, correct? Is that your question?
you're using the word religion out of utility.
Yes.
According to what
And
calculus?
I'm explaining the utility. Yes.
Okay, but there's also the negative utility you have to counter as well, which is if you're using that in a way that's not constant with how it's used by other people who are fruitfully doing so, you're actually creating obfuscation and confusion, which are synonyms, so that was unnecessary. But you're
Because many people,
That
many
created
people-
obfuscation and confusion.
many people use it in the way that I am using it, and what they it properly communicates to people these types of behaviors that we all commonly, at least in the American
What do you
culture, at
mean?
least in the
What do you mean
Western
by it
culture,
properly
commonly
communicates to people?
that we commonly associate with religious practices and religious beliefs, dogmatism, zealotry, fanaticism, etc. We can point to media that
no, sorry. So I
gamut.
understand that it corresponds. I understand that the label corresponds to certain tropes, but I think that's the problem. That's not itself the solution. The issue is that that term then starts to be used because it's being used to categorize these things under the same umbrella. That now starts to be used to indicate that there's a common causal feature behind them. And I think that's a spurious claim unless you can seriously justify that.
Well, it indicates a very similar behaviors, right?
No,
And I
that's the
think
surface
where
level. That's the
utilities are.
surface level phenomenon that we're trying to explain.
Hold on,
The behaviors are the data that we have. The account we are trying to give that explains the
We
phenomenon.
all understand.
But if we
dangers.
but if we lump these under the same category and we treat them as one, then we presume a common cause. But that may be spurious.
It's
It may
a
be
way to communicate that there are similar dangers to believing something with a religious fervor, even if it's not
But
religious
what
in nature.
does-
Because we can point to things like the Crusades.
But what
we can
is-
point to things like the Inquisition.
But
we can
Wick,
point to
Wick,
these
but Wick,
atrocities,
careful.
which people are all
No, but
familiar.
careful.
Stop, if I may finish, they're all
No, but
everyone's
you may-
familiar
Mom
with
and
them.
Dad.
It's just a useful commonality,
Sure,
a
but Wick,
touchstone
Wick.
upon which to identify and say, "Hey, look."
Wick, you said something that you really shouldn't have, and I want you to
I promise
address
you, I
it.
said everything I should
You
have.
said a religious fervor that is not religious in nature. What does that mean?
A religious fervor
That is not religious in nature.
tied to a religious belief.
Okay,
a
so
religious way of
but you
thinking.
see the problem though is that you're using the term religious in two completely
Do you think
incommensurate
gay
ways.
just means happy?
But then comparing the two to
Does
validate each
gay
other.
just mean happy?
Hold on, wait. Before I leave,
Well,
Well,
hold on.
for me
Gay
it
just mean
does.
happy.
What-
Obviously not.
Okay.
Words change. Words. There are many different
these
definitions of the same
words,
word.
but hang on.
Spend this for a
Just
moment. Can we
because
spend this for a moment. Hold on, because we've gone over this ground many times, and I want to leave. And I got to leave soon. I would like to hear Falser's contribution to this conversation. Falser's, by the looks of
Thank
it,
you, Paul.
seems like he might have something intelligent to say,
So,
but I don't know.
So much.
So
I
what do
don't
you
know
have
if
to
it's
say?
intelligent, but lots to say. So I'm going to start on something Sunday said, because I think he hit the nail on the head with something very concise.
Okay, never mind. I was
which is
wrong.
that
Go ahead.
the utility of words is really heavily attached to the general understanding of them, right? And we seem to really be glossing over that. Paul, you have created this circular logic in one of your arguments. So you're
meant
talking
it
about
bad for
hold
you,
on.
piece of shit.
Hold on. So you
Go ahead.
talk about how these like axiomatic beliefs we have and these core values are inherently tied to a religion. And what you're doing is when
Yes.
someone says, "What about people who aren't religious?" is you're expanding the definition of religion to
Yes.
suit your need to make your point and
Absolutely.
include them instead of engaging with like the core of that point.
Yep.
So let's go to that, right? Let's go to
Yes.
your definition of religion, which in it, and therefore there's
Yes.
validity in it. And when asked to prove that utility, the only thing I heard you say, maybe I missed something, the only thing I heard you say was, Well, Jordan Peterson uses it that way, so there must be utility in it because damn isn't he popular. So, couple of problems.
I know.
He's not popular because he has a super niche definition of something. That's not really the case.
What evidence
He's
do you have that he's
popular for
not?
a number of reasons, but you being reductive and trying to boil it down to that doesn't really prove your argument. And so when you use this expanded, hold on, I'm almost done. When you use this expanded version of this word religion that has a meaning that isn't something that's commonly understood to include, you have lost all utility in it because the by virtue of us having to have this argument and discussion, the utility and the lack of it is proved.
Wrong. This is what cringe far right conservatives say, that, oh well, trans women aren't really women. It's like, well, hold on. There's utility potentially in expanding the definition beyond the way that we normally characterize it.
Well, hold on, we're not talking about a social issue here. We're just talking about the
Religion
function
is
of
a
the word
social
religion.
issue.
This
Wait,
is not
no, we are
an evolving
absolutely
social
talking about
issue.
a social issue.
Quick,
What
get
is
behind your
religion
fucking
if not a
computer.
social issue?
We're not debating the place of religion in it.
I'm rolling out soon, so I want to respond to this
go ahead.
utterly disgusting point that I went to bat for. All right, I interrupted Sunday and Wick just to give you an opportunity to speak, and this is how you took
And I
it.
appreciate you for that.
I will. That's fair. Arguments about utility. Utility is a practical piece of evidence that will play out. So we could sit here and argue about it all day, and it will only be in actions that crop up in other ways can we determine it. I cite it as an example. The idea that using religion in this way causes confusion, I would say, is rebutted by the fact that if it did cause confusion, it was obfuscated. Then it would be hard for me to believe that Jordan Peterson is as successful as he is, given that it's so central to his message. What's wrong with that statement? I'm not saying that proves it, but it's certainly some evidence that it is not as confusing.
Well,
as
Alex Jones is popular. He speaks to a lot of the same topics.
Right. So then the question is, what is Alex Jones and what is Alex Jones saying that is causing him to be as popular as it is? Is there any?
I don't think we
can
get
into that in the next 5 minutes.
He's saying they're dumping chemicals into the water that turns the frogs gay.
I mean, that's not a lie, right? That's actually happening. So I mean, but wait, I want to say something. I want to say something real quick. As much as it hurts me to defend this guy, because I mean, I feel like you are FPF
Young.
Yes,
Gotcha.
Young. Yeah, I feel like you're kind of trolling. I feel like you're like the actual new age, the neo definition of what an NPC is. Like you just look everything up on ChatGPT, and then just try to act like you know what you're talking about. You know, that's like the new version. So, but there is some truth in what you're saying when it comes to like definitions should have a variety of ways for you to describe a thing. Like it shouldn't be so narrow-minded, but it's just frustrating hearing it come out of your mouth and me
But
having to
it
defend
should
you.
also be so broad as to lose all meaning.
The frogs
Yeah, I
being
know,
gay
I
is
agree.
actually a really good point here because it's as if you took that in Alex Jones and you said the frogs must be gay because he's popular. Like that's how you structured your counter argument.
No, I said it was.
I know you said the definition must mean that
Frogs
because Jordan
must be
Peterson's
gay,
popular.
or else they
It's
have
the same
violated the
mechanism
gay
that you
agenda,
use.
and they will be
No, I
punished.
said I dispute the degree to which
First
you
they
claim
came for the
use
frogs,
of-
and I did nothing.
The use of religion causes
The gay agenda just brunch.
causes obfuscation. Because if it did cause obfuscation, I think it would interfere. It would make it difficult for Peterson to be as popular as he is.
Your entire argument is a giant obfuscation. Like you've bounced between all these little mechanisms to never address the counter argument. You said, well, people have to be religious in their moral findings because
True.
religion includes everyone by nature.
True.
Right? So like
By my
that doesn't
definition,
really
makes
address the
religion do
point.
nothing.
Right. So then, is
don't know what
nothing
point-
religious if everything is religious?
I defended his.
I don't know what point people are making.
I was defending his position that
They got him.
We don't know.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Young, thank you for coming. I know you
Thank
have
you.
to go.
Thank you. I'll just
see you
close
later.
with this. Thank you all. I appreciate the feedback. I already know I'm right. It's just a matter of convincing everyone else that I'm right. And now that I've heard the talking points of my NPC opponents, I will reformulate
What
my
a
strategy.
very religious way of looking at things.
And I will bring you to the heavenly glory that is truth.
Before you go, you have to
that
show me your
Peter-
bookshelf.
That Peterson's laid out for us.
You have to show me your bookshelf
What do you,
before you go.
what do you want to? What do you want to?
I just want to see the whole thing. I'll look it over later. Can we get a clear shot?
Hold on, let me
Nice,
up the
nice.
ISO.
Scroll up a little bit.
Let me up the ISO on this.
Sweet. Can you like just
like my
go?
te- you-
Can you go?
you like
Can
my
you
10
zoom
Hey,
into?
piggy bank.
Can you zoom?
Look, it's Piggy.
Can you zoom into every cubicle,
Is that the Wheel of Time?
left to right?
Robert Jordan?
Hey, Paul, do you have a dictionary we could
Dude.
zoom in on to find the word religion?
I'm sorry. He called me an NPC with that kind of joke. Please.
Piggy called you an NPC.
A little bit more to the right. We need the
by the
last.
way-
We need the last right side there. A little bit up.
This right here is my fiction shelf.
Sweet.
The Bible is on it somewhere. I think that's the Bible right there, along with my other fiction
So
books.
fucking.
So there are
based.
4 definitions for religious:
Cool.
Alright, we good?
relating to or believing in a religion, forming part of someone's thought about or worship of a divine being. 3, belonging to or relating to a monastic order or other group of people who are united by their practice of religion. Or 4, treated or regarded with a devotion and scrupulousness appropriate to worship.
Sorry, what are you
Hey, what's the
reading?
definition of woman in the dictionary?
So
What's
now,
the definition
now
of
is,
woman?
is scientism a religion? Let's answer that question.
I think the
No,
fourth
that's
definition
not.
would
It
be
is,
what we
correct.
would look at and say that these types of devotion and
All right, I'm gonna roll.
worship of things are okay. See you later.
Thank you,
are
Wick.
kind of,
Godspeed. Appreciate
yep,
it.
Godspeed.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Are
Peace, guys.
Goodbye, Paul.
Peace, 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 peace.
yeah, but I am curious, Falsers, since I have you here, and it's been a while. So hello, welcome back.
Hello, thank you.
Did you hear my take on this whole thing? Because I do not agree with P.F. Young that everyone is religious and everything is religious. I think that's silly, but I do think that there are a lot of people who engage in what I would call religious thinking or religious behaviors that may not see themselves as religious at all, but yet they are, again, treating or regarding with a devotion, a scrupulousness appropriate to worship, whatever their ideology, idea, sports team, whatever happens to be. I think that happens a lot, and I think a lot of us are loath to admit it simply because of the baggage that something being religious has.
I'm gonna take my leave too. I am deeply under the weather, so thank you, Wick, for
Good luck.
facilitating.
And we will set up. Apparently, I guess I'm having a Dev versus the World or something that's going to be coming up. But I'll get you details. It's on Twitter.
Sounds good.
Much appreciated, Wick. Have a good one.
Have a good night.
I had a good suggestion for
Bye,
you,
Sunday.
for us that we.
That was not fun. We did not enjoy that. Sunday believes slavery is bad because he has faith that a slave is being mistreated because many subjective perceptions of the objective have corroborated that. I don't know what you're talking about. Well, that was awful. Let's see where I'm sending you. Oh, looks like Demon Mama's live. Sending you there. Is this, Sweet. Tell him this, Sunday sent you.